myself and I got bigger plans, you might have guessed it. This is my world from sea to sky, didn't plan it. Evil combated, people will try to test your patience. Stretching through the days, catch me living, I don't hesitate. Either way, if you hear the name, you will know. Crickets and creatures will come in the night. Keep my back from the reaper who's hunting and running, you gotta decide. I'm just controlling my fate. I'm just controlling my I'm just controlling my fate. I'll never fade. Oh. I'm just controlling my fate. I'm just controlling my fate. Oh. I'm just controlling my. I'm just controlling my. I'm just controlling my. It's not the same, so it's time to ride. Forever I live. I feel my soul coming alive. Coming alive. Roll from the ashes and survive. I'm coming alive. Here we go now. Here we go now. Check, check. Here we go now. Here we go now. Check, check. Here we go now. Come on. Roll from the ashes and survive. I'm coming alive. I'm coming alive. I'm coming alive. I'm coming alive. I'm just controlling my fate. I grind, I rise, I thrive. I'm coming alive.
Born to be rising, woken by the crack of dawn, sworn to survival, even with your shackles on. Time for the showdown, lighting that fire never goes out. Climbing so high, let 'em know now. Know your name. Are you ready for the call? Feel the urge inside you wanted to win. It's pulling you in, ready for it all. If there's any moment now, it's the one. Are you ready for the call? Making history, won't settle for less. The best of the best, heroes never fall. When the challenges are light, let 'em come. We belong with the fearless. We belong with the brave. When the whole world hears us, let 'em know our name. This is our legacy. This is our destiny. There is no stopping the champions. We will rise. We will rise. We will rise. Today we turn the tide.
Break the gates, break the door down. Whatever's in the way is getting torn down. Then I pit the other side beyond your short stash. If you ain't know it then you should know it now. One tap, one tap, one tap, one dub. My team doing nothing to fear that's covered. Guess I gotta study all the pressure we apply. Come take a dive in the tides I'm under. Come check the rise to refine my hunger. Here's a little wave on your way down. Everything we try to undermine was apply, my brother. Our time's coming any day now. No winner if it ain't us. Better pay up in the battle our own. How to ever show them any fear, but it's still clear. Out of this water with the winners all dope. Now I couldn't relate to that with my faith. Even if the height's too tall, all those who ain't with me send away. But tell me,
Are you ready for the call? Feel the urge inside you wanted to win. It's pulling you in, ready for it me stronger. I got a long way left to go. Don't know what I'm doing, but even if I have to go alone, it doesn't matter, 'cause I'm always ready for the fight. And even after I've been knocked down, won't change my mind. I've been here before a million times, caught in between the truth and the lies. Can't hold me down for a minute longer. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. tomorrow breaks, so fall the chains, and the one who's caged turns another page. What you thought was lost still remains. Open up the gates, and you'll see its face. I hear the whispers singing, try again. Spread out your wings, but you will fly again. It's a blessed curse, losing what was planned. So we unrehearsed, surrendering to chance. All the dreams you've questioned and feared, all the hopes you swallowed, moments soaked by your tears that have made you hollow, rising out of the clouds as the doubts grow quiet. Didn't know you'd find it, but now you hear. I hear the whispers singing, try again. Spread out your wings, but you will fly again. And you will, and you will, and you will.
Hello and welcome everyone to Regional Championship Calgary. We're here to play some Magic. 15 rounds of Modern plus top 8 and 12 slots of the Pro Tour up for grabs. My name is Julian Car. Joining me today is Mason Clark very early in the morning for the first shift here. This should be a treat, Mason. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm super excited to sit here and talk about Modern with you. It's my favorite Magic format. It's so good right now. There are so many good decks that could easily win this RC this weekend. I'm excited to see some action.
It is not my favorite Magic format, but it's somewhat close to my favorite Magic format. And my current favorite Magic format, people have opinions about, let's just say. I'm a legacy player. So Modern should be an absolute treat. The Pro Tour was a blast, so really excited to see how things have changed since then. Obviously, recent ban restricted announcement, Modern was left as is, which I think players are generally really happy about. So felt pretty diverse there. See if maybe the deck from the PT repeats. Avatar is also legal, so there could be also new cards and new decks to emote as well. There is a lot to unpack here over, again, 15 rounds on Saturday and Sunday. We'll be here for the first half of them. As you can see, we've got some killers as well. Haiyue casting the second shift alongside, not me, but Pro Tour top 8 competitor from Edge of Eternity's Jonny, Guttman, aka Ginky, will be on the call, which is, I mean, that's some high-level wizardry.
Yeah, really, really powerful magician. Great commentary duo, and I can't wait to see them later in the day. I'm just going to be here all day.
Yeah, oh yeah. I'll be parked right here with the baby as soon as the shift is over. Round one's coming up in just a moment. Should have some pretty fun games up for you. But like you said, Modern feels pretty diverse right now. I feel like I'm very curious what the decks look like. In fact, we have a metagame breakdown here to go ahead and look at. Jeskai Blink, the deck of choice. There's a lot of Blink and a lot of Goryo's in the Pro Tour. Goryo has been pushed down a little bit more, all the way down to 6th place there or so. But the blue-white Blink deck, I guess adding one other color just made it even better.
Yeah, and it turns out Filet China Fire's Fury is just a really strong end-game card and not that big of a splash, you know? And there's some other red cards you like to play as well, like Ragavan. So just a really easy kind of natural evolution, and players love these kind of mid-rangey interactive decks, right? So it's no surprise to see this one near the top, and if not the actual top as it actually is. And it just happens to be quite good, right? I think even if this deck wasn't the best, we might see it near the top, and it's definitely vying for that top slot.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny that competitive and commander players have the same love of blinking creatures, but it turns out to be quite powerful in all different versions of it. Boros Energy, the second most represented deck. I feel like the deck that just keeps on giving, whether it's good or bad, people love to register it. And then, of course, the two Izzets in a row, Prowess and Affinity, with a pretty similar meta share there. People apparently cannot get away from the blue-red spells.
They really like those sort of things. And two decks kind of doing similar-ish things, trying to, end the game quickly. So there's sort of, like, how do you want to go about doing it? Is it like all speed or a little bit of interaction? And it looks like players have ever so slightly here in Canada landed on a little bit faster. And then mono green Amulet Titan. This is the deck that Canada's really known for, right? Like the Canadians really brought this to the world back, in the early 2018 on the SCG series. And some of the best, Amulet players in the world are Canadian and are here this weekend, like Dom Harvey playing this deck. So I'm a little surprised to see it as low. I kind of thought maybe, they might round up the Countrymen, but it is such a hard and good deck that I'm not surprised to see it kind of right here in the middle of the pack, near the top, but not the actual top, as some players might be a little afraid to pull the trigger over a 15-round tournament.
Yeah, again, rounds are long. You do have to play quickly. I mean, I think the Amulet Titan players have, some personal things on the line right now as well, based on the last banner restricted announcement. And then rounding it out, of course, 4C Domain Zoo. Again, you cannot get away from aggro at a Magic tournament. People will find a way to register the aggressive cards, and 4C Domain Zoo feels like the best pure aggressive deck. And Simic Birthing Ritual occupying the same metagame share. Very curious to see what that looks like.
Yeah, the Birthing Ritual deck has sort of been creeping up and up and up in metagame share, right? It's one of those decks that we kind of saw, I think it was like 2 or 3 copies of the Pro Tour, and it was like, oh, okay, that's kind of a cool deck. And then we saw a couple people at the United States RC, the first round one, they kind of qualified with it, and then it sort of did well on some of the backup series like NRG and Apex and those sort of places, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger in representation. And lots of very strong Magic players I saw were kind of like, I can't really judge you for your deck selection this weekend. I'm playing Coiling Oracle. And it really is saying something when so many people are starting to move towards that kind of card. This deck does not play that many bangers, but it's really good at fighting against some of these decks like Amulet Titan that some players think are the best decks in Modern.
Yeah, curious to see how that checks out. And as I did mention before, I will reiterate here, Avatar is legal as of yesterday in tabletop. So players can register Avatar cards at this tournament. I imagine we'll see a few at least as we go through the rounds here. Very curious to see how many players got their hands on Badger Mole Cub. That seemed to be the card that Twitter at least was talking about the most.
Yeah, that card's incredibly powerful. Generates so much mana out of nowhere. We're seeing it do great things in Standard. That one's doing really well. Wan Shi Tong is sort of the card that during spoiler season everyone was like, this is Quantum Riddler 2. Such a powerful sort of, way to get your opponent. And I think, decks like the Birthing Ritual are the places where we'll most likely see that card. Really values having a blue flash creature. So I'm excited to see that. And then we've seen from some of the other events going on since the release of Avatar that like Fuko has come out as sort of a replacement in these energy decks for Showdown of the Scalds as a way to be a creature and still give you that big draw card engine. So, Avatar has a couple other cards as well that people are interested in, but has a couple pretty big players. I'm really excited to see what players do with those cards this weekend.
Yes, that seems sweet. We'll go ahead and look at the first deck here in our feature match. Lindenk is on deck here with Grixis Midrange. I feel like the former RC champion is just saying, you know what? I'm just better. Let me register all the skill-intensive cards.
Yeah, all of them plus Serum Visions as a treat to the rest of the field.
Okay. No, this deck... Poison Dart Frog, but, in the main deck. Interesting.
Yeah, at least this one's castable, so we've got that going on for us, which is a pretty huge gain. And you know what, like this deck is really appealing to a lot of players. I'm really excited to see, how does this one actually play out? Because one of the things about decks like this is they are often really good into certain metagames, right? You're kind of really saying, hey, I think my deck lines up well with what's going on, because you're not overpowering people. You're sort of having the right tools for the right weekend. So I'm curious to see, if this pays off, because it looks to me like we have a lot of really good cards against things like Jeskai Blink, like Titan, which are 2 of our 5 most played decks this weekend.
Yeah, curious to see kind of how it all shakes out. I feel like that has been Grixis's kind of history as a deck. It is not always the best set of control colors, but often lots of surgical tools you can line up to try and attack a metagame if you feel like you understand exactly how things work out. And obviously playing 4 Quantum Riddler, 4 Psychic Frog, there are plenty of hits in the colors here as well, playing some very, very powerful cards.
Yeah, in a lot of ways too, we talked about the Ritual deck being an interactive sort of stopping combo deck. This deck's saying, hey, I'm a little less good at maintaining all those synergies, but I've got a lot of stronger cards on their own. Like Psychic Frog is going to carry your game way harder than Ice Fang Coatl, right? So combining it with all the pitch elementals that we see that deck really playing, it makes a lot of sense. And Kaito is a card that we've seen be really powerful in Standard. Even with, the sparse Pioneer events we've had, it's shown up there. And it has some incredibly strong synergies, here with things like Subtlety. Ninjutsu that Subtlety back to your hand, or even a Riddler draw even more cards. So I'm really curious to see how this plays out.
Yeah, we'll take a look at some of the other decks as well. But Worlds is coming up as a reminder to me. Mid-range enjoyers rejoice as Kaito is at least going to be somewhere in the first round of this tournament. But very powerful card, as you mentioned, Jeskai mid-range. Another deck we can look at here. Basically, Teferi and friends with, I guess this little Ragavan guy is pretty good. Not quite control, not quite blink, somewhere in the middle here.
Yeah, and this is just like kind of a pile of really good cards. I would think the big standout thing, yeah, modern. We get a lot of soupy, piley kind of decks. Honestly, kind of like Legacy in my mind, without the wasteland aspect of things back in 2013 when I first started playing. So a little nostalgic in that way. But the big call out here, I think, is Ledger Shredder. That's a card we're not seeing a ton in these Jeskai Blink decks. That is a very powerful card. We saw back in the end of the MH2 metagame, Ledger Shredder was a mainstay of the format. And with cards like Flage, it makes a lot of sense. You can just discard your Flage, not have to commit that 3 mana for the clunky part of it, move through your deck, and with Quantum Riddler, oh, don't get me started. Oh my goodness, it's going to go crazy so fast.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Curious to see maybe would Bird reign supreme across the Modern tournament. There's a lot of powerful birds in Modern right now between Quantum Riddler and perhaps Ledger Shredder. Even a little Strix Serenade there in the main deck here. So, always birds floating around. It looks like we're pairing up round one. We should have a match on camera for you in just a few moments. Appreciate your patience there out online. If you're out there chatting, let us know what you're playing Modern right now. What would have you brought to this tournament? Do you think everyone is wrong? Do you have the tech that no one else has? What avatar cards are you playing? Let us know in the chat.
Speaking of, pretty innovative decks, and we were talking about everything, here's Boros Energy. It's kind of a new brew for this tournament.
Oh, yeah.
You probably haven't seen it before.
Yep.
And so, this is on screen. This deck has, I would say, was one of the early standouts after we fixed all the oopsies from MH3, which I feel okay saying personally. And so it's kind of like, okay, we got rid of the Nadus and stuff, and kind of what are we supposed to be doing? And a lot of players defaulted to this. And then the Pro Tour came around and they moved away, right? Players sort of were like, actually, at the Pro Tour, I don't think this deck is the sort of move. But what we've seen post Pro Tour is metagame shifted a little, so energy became a little bit better. And like you mentioned at the start of the show, players really love this deck. And there's a lot of actual fun to it, right? It plays a lot like traditional Magic. I've got creatures, interactive spells, I've got a couple good sideboard cards. I'm ready to game.
It's rock solid, and that is an unintentional pun, but it's so mid-range, it does low-key kind of play like the Rock of old. It is just all good cards, all high card quality, all things that make more things than the printed value on the card, and cheap removal spells, right? There's a lot of comfort, I think, for Magic players, especially registering in a big tournament and a long tournament, and just playing solid cards. I have an answer for everything. My card quality is extremely high. My game plan is really straightforward. I'm going to be able to weasel my way out of a lot of different situations. Sure, I can't turn 2 combo kill someone or really present a super aggressive uninteractable line that they're not going to be able to do something about, but I am going to turn over turn, get further and further ahead, and a lot of players are really comfortable playing that style of deck, especially at this kind of event. So I'm not surprised at all that Boros Energy is showing up in such big numbers. I think especially post PT, like you mentioned.
Yeah, and like we talked about a little bit at the beginning of the show, the Legend of Fuko in the sideboard as a 3 of, this is Showdown the Scalds by another name, and has a kind of a weaker chapter 2 with just giving you mana, but that does help you cast some of the mini cards you exile. And then the backside actually just being quite a large body is Fuko that makes large dragons. So when your deck does eventually sort of run out of gas, as this deck's prone to do, even though this card tries to supplement that, of course, you then just have a way to sink all of your mana. And another really surprising thing too here is the main deck just, players are starting to move back towards Fable the Mirror Breaker. We saw a move towards Season Pyromancer before, so I'm really interested to see how this one comes out, because despite being, as we joked about, stock Boros Energy, there are a couple big differences, and little differences make, a lot of changes in Magic, and having these huge shifts could be massive.
Oh, for sure. I also think that, obviously, in a format like Modern, sideboard slots are at a premium. There are lots of different decks you potentially want to try and fight against that are maybe doing things that are more unfair than Boros Energy might be doing. So I think those choices will also impact Boros Energy results a lot as we go through. Just quickly to read the backside of Avatar Roku while we have a couple minutes before we load up our first game. 4/4 Firebending 4, pay 8, make a 4/4 red dragon creature with flying, and for some reason, Firebending 4. So the first dragon, kind of tricky to get. Every other dragon, very, very easy to get. So spirals out of control, as you mentioned, Mason.
Yeah, and that's something that these kind of decks want. When you're playing your Jundi decks, you want something that you can use as a mana sink, right? Back in my day, it was Raging Ravine. These days, we have a little bit better cards.
Yeah, it's slightly improved, let's say.
Mhm.
Yeah, lands are also pretty good here. Arena of Glory, always a fun one. Flade obviously comes back forever and ever and ever. So Boros Energy may, depending on the pilots, we may see a lot of it throughout the course of the tournament. I think it will be very telling, kind of like it was at the Pro Tour. How many of those Boros Energy decks we saw at the top of the day in that metagame share are still remaining on day two? Because could be a lot of them, could be half of them, could be just a small handful of pilots. And I think we'll definitely see the best players rise to the top if they chose to bring this strategy, assuming that it's decently positioned at all in the metagame, which I think I have to believe it is.
Yeah, I think one of the things about Boros Energy that really speaks to me after watching it and playing with it so much is that this deck loses to strategies, not cards, right? It's really hard for you to sideboard out a Boros Energy deck, right? It's like you can't bring enough Wrath of the Skies type stuff and reasonably cover the rest of Modern in a healthy metagame at least to then beat the Boros Energy deck. So really, this deck, when you're playing it on the weekend, you're saying, hey, I think the metagame share is going to be such that I'm going to be favored across everything. And even if I have a bad matchup, man, if I just go like double Ocelot Pride or Ragavan into a 3-drop, it's really hard for you to win, especially on the draw. And having that kind of, oops, I'm on the play, I run over the game, maybe you stumble a little bit draw, is something that's really appealing to a lot of decks, especially in Modern, where you are doing really strong things, but sometimes you do have a pretty reasonable fail rate. We don't have those cantrips like you talked about in your favorite format, Legacy, right? We do have a little bit less consistency here. So being able to run someone over is always pretty good. It's kind of like my favorite joke about Amulet Titan is I don't care how bad your matchup is, you can die on turn 2.
Very true. They do have Surveil lands too, which everybody loves. We'll see how long it takes to resolve some of those Surveil triggers. It's funny thinking about what you're just saying there. It does kind of feel like, you probably don't want to play against Neoform 10 rounds in a row. But even then, you do have some game. We saw Blue-White Blink at the Pro Tour beat Neoform Nassif with a very tricky bit of piloting there to get around in his late round matchup on day 2. But this deck obviously quite a bit more aggressive than something like Blue-White Blink that is similarly grindy, I would say, as far as approaches to the format goes. So lots of fun to partake in here. We'll see how long the rounds go. Amulet Titan players, if you're listening, please play your rounds nice and swiftly. But we are up with the round one here. It is Chris Ha on the left side playing Boros Energy. We're going to get straight into it. And Lyndon Coote, the champion of the last RC in Canada on Grixis mid-range. Let's have some fun, Mason.
Yeah, and Lyndon, part of Team Steam Vents, Team Vents, pardon me. Their shirts look just like Steam Vents. Yeah, and they made it, they're a brand new team sort of on the Pro Tour scene, and they put a player into the top 8 of their team's first Pro Tour with the last one. So these guys really know Modern, and when you're putting in a lot of work and you're really familiar with these formats, these decisions that we saw in the Grixis mid-range deck are probably going to pay off really well because you need to be in tune to make good deck slots for that, and Lyndon's working hard with it. So I'm excited to see how this plays out as the Serum Visions is in the opening hand.
Oh, let's go. A couple lands of Serum Visions. Everything is coming up, Lyndon. Funny you mentioned that, though. I know, obviously, my background is in League of Legends. Not completely analogous to Magic, although I have played Magic for a decent amount of time. And in North America, in League of Legends, similarly, a Canadian always slips through and does really well. So I'm not surprised that the last PT had someone from a new Canadian team sneak on in as players consider their decisions for their opening hands here.
Yeah. Now, don't worry if you need to talk League of Legends. I don't want to brag. Recently hit platinum, so I can translate for our people at home. I'm new to the game. Iron 4 to plat in a couple months. They're calling me the new faker. It's what they're saying. It's what they're saying.
Well, Chris with a mulligan to start things off. Actually, looks like both players shuffling up and ready to go. Very important to make these pretty critical early game decisions in a format like Modern. Games can go pretty quickly, so even with the Serum Visions to smooth out the draw, looks like both players are going to throw it back here.
Yeah, traditionally these Psychic Frog and mid-rangey decks struggle a bit with Boros Energy as well. So it's not surprising to see Lyndon take a mulligan and looking for the key cards that do matter for stopping the energy deck from getting the ball going. Because often once they get on the board and start, they get a Flage or a flip to Jonny, those things are pretty hard to answer since you are trying to kind of one for one and let the frog go the distance. Having blockers or just, sticky permanents can be really challenging.
Yeah, we talk about Boros Energy like it's some really reasonable, noble deck. They're still playing Ocelot Pride and Ragavan. They are not messing around when it comes to, I guess, the rest of the MH3 cards that got left, as you mentioned. So certainly some powerful cards we should see across the day here as players consider their next few keeps. And it looks like we might be keeping here. It looks like Lyndon's keeping. So if we're playing a land, we should be off to the races. Well, never mind. It's one on the bottom. That's a keep, and that's a keep on the other side. Turn 1 belongs to Lyndon, and it's Mishra's Bauble. That's not a land. Almost got there.
He tricked you there, but it's all right. That's how they do it. Notably, Chris had the choice between Flage and Blood Moon in the opening hand here to keep on 6. bottomed the Flage, kept the Blood Moon. So that's an element to this game that we might need to keep in mind. Now, this is open decklist. Both players know that Chris has access to Blood Moon, but it's only a 2 of. So I'm curious to see if Lyndon wants to play around that as the game develops.
All right, we're cracking a polluted Delta, and lots of shuffling as expected at any Magic tournament these days. Go ahead and find ourselves a Steam Vents for Team Vents. Interesting, but good to see that the branding is being relatively represented here, both on the table and on the shirt.
It's good to be consistent.
It is good to be consistent. We'll see what the tournament play is here. It is a preordained Serum Visions somewhere still in the deck, but we'll have a little opt instead and see what we like here as far as card selection goes. Keep. Oh, not yet.
It looks like Lyndon's hand's a little awkward at the moment. I think he kept like a Bauble preordained fetch with the idea of that making it all come together, and Holy Heat off the top there. Nice one.
There's Tamiyo as well, also a nice one. Not banned in Legacy, perhaps I wish it was, but Psychic Frog is banned in Legacy. Get to play here in Modern for Grixis. Potentially, we could play the Frog here with 2 lands, but going to consider all the options here as Chris just passes it back, excuse me. And there's Tamiyo. Go ahead.
Nice. And this is a really, I think great moment for those at home who are trying to first step into Modern. You might be thinking, well, Lyndon only has, a 1-mana kill spell and a 1-mana creature. Why is he even thinking here? He obviously has to play this. And from Lyndon's perspective, he's giving Chris a chance to use a card like Galvanic Discharge and then curve into it too. He could hold up his mana and maybe then weave in that Tamiyo on a later turn there. So it seems really innocuous, but even just that small kind of nod of like, should I even play this card, is the difference maker if you're at home and trying to make your way out here to these regional championships and pro tours.
Yep. So Chris wants here lines up a second Sacred Foundry. Very impressive looking art there. And I'm going to go ahead and pass the turn. And we'll crack a land here on Lyndon's side. My brain is trying to pass all of the beautiful arts in Chris's deck. Eventually, I'll figure out what card on that card on the table is. That's what I'm going to here for Lyndon.
I believe it's Goblin Bombardment.
That would make sense. That in my head that lined up. But let me tell you, there's a lot of Magic art these days.
There is. It used to be my superpower when I first started commentary about 3 or 4 years ago, that I just knew all the arts all the time at an instant. It used to be like a little mini game. They try to trick me. Nowadays, sometimes they get me, but I still got a little bit. This old dog can with new tricks.
Oh yeah, that's a counterpult if my Google foo is to be believed, which is a very niche secret layer. But fetch a Lavash perhaps here for the Boros Energy deck as Lyndon considering the Surveil here.
Yeah, and it looks like Lyndon's hand Force a Negation, Quantum Riddler, and Holy Heat. If he has another blue card, being able to Force a Negation here and then maybe draw a land. Yeah, he did have the subtlety. This could be potentially a great way for Lyndon to get a bunch of new resources if a land's drawn here, as we will be meeting the requirements for Quantum Riddler to draw 2.
Always good. It's funny. It's not a consideration I always think of these days, but it is interesting to see these blue decks wanting to go low on cards on purpose in order to draw extra cards off the Riddler. It's just that powerful. Cantripping is good, but drawing a couple extra cards is even better.
Exactly. And this is one of those things too that like Quantum Riddler, should really stick out to players, is when it asks you just to play Magic, right? It's like, hey, interact, trade 1 for 1, and I'll reward you for doing that. That's always something that I'm looking for when I'm, looking to play cards or decks. Is don't ask too much of me and give me a lot out. As we do see Quantum Riddler cast here, and we get 2 cards into the Warp Zone and just passing the turn.
Feels really good. As a reminder, though, turn 3 is coming up for both players, so powerful 3-drops are going to be online. Flage obviously a little ways away from sticking on the table for Chris, but could potentially get that train rolling if they want to.
Beautiful Kamigawa Plains.
Oh, we love to see it. Absolutely gorgeous arts here in Chris's deck. And Blood Moon, the card we looked at earlier, that is pretty good on this board, even with 1 basic there for Lyndon.
Yeah, Lyndon picked up a Psychic Frog. Oh my goodness. Another Quantum Riddler off the top. Maybe a way to find some basics there. I was going to say how we picked up Psychic Frog and we were pretty happy, but with the Blood Moon, we're now locked underneath things. So Lyndon's deck, I would say, is predominantly blue-black and is sort of playing a little red. So he has cards like on Holy Heat. He will be able to cast cards, as we do see on Holy Heat here on the Jonny, in order to answer that. But wow, this is going to be an interesting one to see if we can get out of it.
Yeah, Blood Moon, especially in the main, certainly tricksy for a lot of these decks. I mean, certainly Not that color intensive across all the decks here, as now Spellbomb's going to be put on the board. That's going to be good for later against the aforementioned Flage, but not for right now, as Linden's still stuck on lands trying to bail their way out of the situation where Blood Moon is locking them out of a lot of potential plays here, and the Boros Energy deck is not going to stop. There's Ragavan Dashed coming onto the board. And that one also is going to eat a removal spell.
And we see Chris here is playing Seasoned Pyroman. So we had saw one of our random deck lists from the field, that was playing Fuko. They had Goblin, they had Fable the Mirror Breaker, the very good grindy Goblin. Seasoned Pyromans are like Quantum Riddler. Once you really just throw your cards on the board, and you see why a lot of players default to it there, as it's just a raw draw to here in these late game scenarios.
Yeah, it's funny. Magic has kind of become as more removal is going to get pointed over at the creatures. This is really where Grixis midrange wants to be, trying to poke as many spells as they can against these very powerful creatures. But another bombardment's going to come down. The cows are ready to get thrown over, and still a creature is on the board. So Linton still struggling again, looking for land drops. Finally finds one, but it's a mountain. Boros Energy happy with where the game is going right now to keep deploying threats. There's Guide of Souls. What do you have? Pass back. Ooh, hate to see it there for the defending champion. And Guide of Soul is going to come over, swinging in for a little bit more damage. Linton now going to be down to 10, I believe.
Yes, and this is also why you see so many players as here comes Flage, the Titan of Fire's Fury. It will get disputed. And like you mentioned before, we have that Nile Spellbomb. If Linden top decks a Swamp, he could, pop it and draw a card if he wants to. Also could play Psychic Frog in that world, but
Spell Snare. And there's the Frog as well, but as you mentioned, still trapped. Is going to shut off the graveyard regardless. No cantrip off of this Spellbomb, but still keeps the Flage at bay. Pretty important, given that you invested an entire counterspell in putting that in the graveyard. I want to make sure it stays in exile. But Boros Energy going to keep making land drops and keep swinging over again. Also does more damage than you think with that Goblin Bombardment on the table. Doesn't take too many tokens to get things going, as Pyromancer are going to keep the train rolling, drawing more cards, filtering some of these charms away, and keeping the cards flowing for Chris, as again the creatures head back into the red zone for 3 more. Guide of Souls up, and Linden's going to scoop it out. I think that was lethal there. Must have had enough damage with the Goblin Bombardment and potentially the Energy Trigger. And the players talking among themselves decide that enough is enough. Blood Moon, as you highlighted, Mason, really the card that kind of hammered down game 1.
Yeah, and this is why you see players willing to pull the trigger on a card that's traditionally thought as like a sideboard cards for decks like Tron and Amulet, because it is really good in those matchups. And you're very happy to kind of, oh, I queued into this deck this round. Yippee, here's my Blood Moon. But against, some other decks too, they just get caught slipping, right? And from Linden's perspective, his draw, he had to make it come together a little bit, right? He was on that mulligan to 6, and he tried his best to respect a Blood Moon, but he can't be overly respectful of it and not be able to cast his other cards. So, sometimes you just get that free win. And will Chris keep that in post-board is another little mini game Linden has to be thinking about. Probably not, but there is a world where sometimes players just leave in a Blood Moon just to kind of keep you honest, and could be getting him in game 2 or 3.
Yeah, we'll have to see here. So take a quick look once again at Linden's Grixis midrange deck. Having a quick peek at the sideboard here, trying to see what we might want to bring in. Some Thoughtseize, have an Orcish Bowmaster. Lots of one-offs here. This is a Grixis player classic. They just want as many different options on their platter as they can bring into their deck. Colgan's Command, more Spell Snares if we feel like that's going to be good. Lots of potential options here. Anything strike your fancy there, Mason?
Yeah, Fire Magic really jumps out to me just as a way to kind of control cards like the Cats. Bowmaster, actually a similar place. Really good way to shoot down some of the incidental little creatures. And then cards like Pyromancer that are going to refuel us, we can punish those a bit. And Spell Snare is going to be a primo card, I think, in this matchup, as there are a lot of really good 2s, like a Jonny, like a Goblin Barbarian, but also just being a 1-mana way to kind of catch back and interact, I think is going to be really good. So I'm excited to see those. And I'm going to guess that Kaito's probably not at its best in this matchup, but I'm curious to see what Linden thinks when it comes to coming out.
Yeah, I think probably want card advantage creatures are a little bit cheaper, a little bit more tempo oriented, rather than the grandeur stuff that Kaito brings to the table. And again, the plan really still get the Riddler going, warp it back eventually, get the Psychic Frog online, maybe get a Tamiyo going. None of that really happened for Linden. Had kind of the early spells, tried to trade out the removal, Bloodman came down, and then all the spells got trapped in hand. So we'll see how it phases out. I'm actually checking the basics again now that we're here. A swamp and 2 islands, so certainly enough to insulate against Blood Moon, assuming you fetch around it. I'm very curious to see if Linden can afford to fetch around a potential Blood Moon, or if you just kind of have to, again, take the gamble. Because it's interesting, like you said, it might just be the Boros Energy player. Chris wants to take them out. So that is a pretty big, like, that's a pretty strong amount of influence for a little 2-of to have, even in your post-board games, even if it's not in your deck, about how your opponent has to approach actually sequencing their land drops. That's one of the reasons Blood Moon is, quite a good card.
Yeah, and from Linden's perspective, no matter what, he's going to need to play at least a third game on the draw, right?
Yeah.
And that's going to be the one I think where he's going to really pay attention to game 2 and then pay attention to will Chris sideboard for game 3, because on the play, Ragavan into Blood Moon is one of the best ways to kind of cheese any matchup in Modern. Even if you have plenty of fetches, plenty of basics, you've got to have it in time, and there's not much time in that world. So I'm curious to see how that goes. As when it comes to the sideboarding here, we see the Fuko legend, the Fuko saga we talked about earlier. I have to imagine that card jumps out to us here as it's just a way to draw a lot of cards. As Edgar Magalhaes would say, here's my good deck with some divinations in the sideboard. So
Nice.
we're going to bring that in. And then Celestial Purge is just sort of kills Psychic Frog and Kaito. So I kind of want the first one. My question is sort of, will we bring in both? And, is actually that first one better than some of these great kill spells that the Boros Energy deck just main decks? Because it's really just Psychic Frog and I guess the sideboard Orcish Bowmaster when it comes to black creatures. But Psychic Frog matters a lot and does outscale some of your removal.
Yeah, I think Purge seems like the spot you bring it in, much like the original Purge of your back in. Oh, God, is that Mirrodin block? Why am I so old? Anyway, also can see a Vexing Bubble poking out of Chris's sideboard. I can't imagine we're going to be bringing that one in here just for Force of Negation, even though Force was decent in game 1. That card also potentially maybe coming out if Linda just wants to be on kind of the kill all of your small creatures and then eventually take over the game plan. But as you said, both players going to be bringing a hefty number of divinations, both pre and post board. So game 1 felt relatively grindy with Blood Moon kind of locking things out. I think if that isn't as much of a factor, I do expect this game to be quite grindy in general. I mean, you do not bring Grixis to a tournament if you don't expect to play, some grindy games. And if Linden wants to start off with a similar record to the last time as the defending RC champion, he's going to have to really grind it out on the draw in game 3, as you mentioned. So could be a rough road ahead, but plenty of play here between these two decks. I think it's one of the nice things about Boros Energy versus, another relatively fair deck. The games of Magic feel relatively honest for Modern.
Yeah, the only really unhonest thing that would happen in game 1 was sometimes that Blood Moon and but besides that, it is pretty normalish Magic, and it is fun. Like the games are interesting. You have to sequence your spells correctly. Am I gonna run out this Voice of Victory really early and maybe run into a spell snare, or am I gonna maybe oh, here's my Jonny, please don't counter it. Like there's a lot of how do I want to sequence my spells? Which one's my opponent going to fight over? And also, do I want to be, attacking or defending? There's a lot of very sort of small decisions, but those small decisions add up and are what make Magic so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, especially registering. I mean, you're registering red-white cards. You better understand how to sequence your cards correctly. That's all you have, I mean, now we have divinations, I suppose. We're actually going to pop over to another table while we wait for our feature match to come back around. We're jumping into the middle of a game that is currently complicating me, but 2 Eldrazi Spawn on one side and some black lands on the other.
It looks like Golgari Birthing Ritual here on the left would be my guess. I'm not exactly sure, but I do see Hapatra, so maybe it's a Yawgmoth deck. I'll tell you what, though. The Ugin from the front side is going to make it a lot easier for us to figure out what's going on. Is this card is nearly unbeatable for most fair decks. I'm curious to see how this black-green deck, if it does anything unfair to kind of overpower the Ugin.
Yeah, look, City of Traders, Ancient Tomb, not legal in Modern, but, still some decent lands that tap for 2 floating around the format here. And, if your opponent has 3 lands and you're resolving Ugin with your 5 lands, I think you're feeling pretty good about the your chances in this game. As we are going to pop back, Linden, turn 1, Tamiyo. That has to feel good. And it's already attacking. Made a clue. Look at that.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we saw in game 1, how on turn 2, Linden was a little hesitant about, do I want to play as Tamiyo or not? And sort of, it's a card you want to protect and run away with the game. Here, getting it down and Chris not having an answer right away makes life so much easier on Linden because he needs to have something that's progressing the game forward. And even if it's just drawing a couple extra cards, that's plenty. And the Psychic Frog backup with 2 threats is so nice.
Yeah, this is, now this is pod racing. Tamiyo into Psychic Frog. I mean, this has in fact killed people as recently as the last Legacy format before the ban. So definitely a pretty good start here on the play. We'll see how the Boros Energy deck can catch up. Not much in the way of sweepers, although there is Wrath of the Skies in the sideboard. I did notice for Chris, so that is something that could potentially help out here. And of course, 2 discharges in a row or similar will also get the job done, but he's going to have to get rid of these powerful creatures. Much like, the Ragavans and the Ajanis of old, both players are bringing good threats to the table, and that is going to be the first purge to exile that Psychic Frog.
Yeah, we saw Chris also bin in a Johnny, probably assigned to Linden's like, oh, you need something specific because that card's quite good, just in the dark. So there's something missing about Chris's hand. Linden's going to pay attention to the decisions and try and figure that out. From Chris's perspective, he just drew another Johnny. So, Linden might think, oh, he just had one here in a second.
Good Magic player, I suppose, as Tamio's going to come back in, make a second clue. The land, Sink into Stupor in hand is a potential interaction spell, not really where you want to be. Instead, we're going to tap some mana and play a card. Which one do we want, Linden?
Well, it looks like just a clue, draw a card, actually.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, very. Maybe looking for something like Mishra's Bauble or maybe a
Serum Visions. Yeah.
With the Tamiyo. Yeah.
Oh, of course. That makes a lot of sense. I forgot. Sorry, again, Legacy player, used to brainstorm. But you do need to work a little bit harder in Modern to flip the old Tamiyo.
Modern is a working man's format.
Yeah, apparently. There's static field here. Going to try and put Tamiyo in jail and do not pass go into the prison. Into the static field you go. A couple energy getting made here. Obviously not going to last forever, but it basically brings enough energy on its own that it's pretty much forever in a game of Modern. And of course, the Boros energy deck, as you may suspect from the name, can in fact make more energy. So Tamiyo unlikely to be freed from these shackles for quite a while, if at all, this game.
Yeah, one of the more devastating plays against lots of decks is, Galvanic Discharge. I don't need to use all my energy, so now the prison stays around even longer, and I killed your thing. That is sort of, one of the back-breaking plays that this deck can present, as another Goblin Bombardment is getting cast this game. We'll see if this one will stick.
Fetching it up here, it looks like, for Linden. So, excuse me, Spell Snare on the mind. Nope, Surveil land instead. Goblin Bombardment is going to resolve, and we'll have a Surveil trigger here. As Linden, once again, considering his options. Feeling tricky, but I mean, Bombardment's such an interesting card because it doesn't represent a problem right now, but it's a big problem kind of as the game goes on. Every card your opponent plays, it feels like. Boros Energy is already a deck that is about playing cards and adding value, and this card just adds extra value to the cards that already bring a ton of value with them, as we are going to put a card into the graveyard there for Linden.
Yeah, it's sort of like worst case scenario. Every kill spell for Linden now has, take one attached, right? That's kind of like the best way that things can work out for him. And with cards like Ajani, it makes it really hard for Linden to ever actually kill the Ajani after that first trigger is resolved with the cats. And then, also you have the ability just to, out of nowhere, do a ton of damage and have that red permanent. So, just bolting in, nothing to do here. Just going to hang out.
Yeah, this is totally chill. Have we played Cryptic Command in this format? That card's sweet. It's not in Linden's deck, I can tell you that much. Much to my chagrin.
Recently.
All right, so presumably left up some form of interaction here if we are bolting ourselves with our land. It is subtlety, of course. And that's going to send that creature straight to the bottom of the library. And now I had this one. Oh, it's just a Galvanic. Never mind.
All right. And so Linden, we talked about this earlier, really wants to have a threat so there's something going forward to progress the game. The Tamiyo is dangerously close to coming back. We did have to use all the energy that Discharge made to answer that subtlety there. So, Linden isn't in a great spot right now, but things aren't so, like call the ambulance. We've got a little bit of breathing room here.
Yeah, definitely considering what balance of interaction and commitment to the board we want to have here. Looks like 2 lands going to get tapped. And the Riddler is back, drawing 1 card this time. But unlike the other time, there are 5 lands in play. Looks like found a Bauble. That's pretty nice. Gonna Bauble himself. Look at the card. Can't do anything about it, but can at least have a look. Does have a fetch land. In fact, if Linden wants to scry it away, and indeed it will do. Look at 25 years of Magic cards all coming together just to optimize one little draw.
Yeah, and it turns out it's good enough in Modern.
Yep. Note Linden also getting basics this game as well. That is 2 islands in play, so the Riddler is going to be able to come back from Warp for that full 5 cost. And Linden feeling much better about this game. Again, even without the full value on the Quantum Riddler. Drawing 1 card, chaining into a Bauble, hitting land drops, being insulated against Blood Moon. All good news here for the Grixis mid-range player as Boros. A little stuck on lands, but more than that, kind of stuck with now a tough decision about this Tamiyo. Don't know exactly how much energy Chris has. I think it's just off to the bottom of the screen. But given the discharge that happened earlier, you have to imagine the energy is running out for this static prison.
Yeah, I think it's at 0 right now. Another very interesting thing from Chris's side is Lyndon could have just gone, hey, fetch that basic like he ended up doing, and then hard cast the Riddler. But Lyndon left mana up. So clearly he has something he wants to do. So this is a pretty big turn for Chris on how he wants to sequence it.
Pyro, committing all the mana. But asking Lyndon the question, do you want to counter this? I'm trying to filter my hand. Hand's pretty full. This is not like a full value Pyro. But again, is it enough?
Yeah, and it looks like Chris does have a Flage in hand. So if this does stick, we're actually going to have then, kind of the Flage hanging over this game for a little bit.
Unless the spell bomb comes back around, but you're absolutely right. Does represent more than just what Pyromancer brings to the board. Obviously, makes some tokens as well. So going a little wide with the Goblin Bombardment. Again, Grixis mostly efficient single target spells. These 2/1/1s do represent an additional problem, although, as we noted, Lyndon does have extra sweepers in his board as well. There's a Toxic Deluge also that I noticed. So plenty of options here alongside those Fire Magics that you pointed out, Mason. But again, Boros Energy, just playing the cards that are in their hand. And there's the Fire Magic right on cue. Gonna sweep that up real quick. That was the interactive spell that Lyndon held up. Looks pretty good there in that spot as we maybe untap and just pop the Riddler there with Tamiyo coming back out of prison in just a moment, we have to assume.
Yeah, Lyndon here getting to use that Fire Magic cleanup, did lose 3 life because of the Goblin Bombardment. Like we talked about, sort of, that's the best case scenario for him a lot of times is, I'm going to take a damage each time. But now has a very interesting point of, I have the Serum Visions. I could try to draw more interactive spells, leave up this clue, or do I hard cast this Riddler? And is going to go with the Serum Visions. Probably pretty worried about the Flage in the graveyard for Chris.
Yeah, another Fire Magic in hand for Lyndon as well, so maybe valuing the instant speed sweeper. It's pretty good against small boards. Won't be quite nearly as good against Flage, but as you pointed out, maybe digging for an answer here instead. I'm pretty confident Lyndon drew a Scalding Tarn off of the Serum Vision's draw and is now considering this scry here. 1 top, 1 bottom, it looks like, is the decision. Can we draw another card here if that one's good? We do have a clue on the table and perhaps a land in hand to play. Hey, is there the Scalding Tarn I saw earlier? We'll see if Lyndon wants to draw the card before shuffling things away or if just wants to pass it. Just going to pass back here as Flooded Strand. Going to get cracked for Chris.
Yeah, Lyndon drew Toxic Deluge for the turn. You mentioned that. Very awkward with Goblin Bombardment. And this is a little bit of what I meant when we were talking about, like, kind of the meta game. Boros Energy, it's really hard to hate out with, like, Wraths and stuff like that, right? Like, they're pretty good, Even if we didn't have this Bombardment, those Fire Magics would be kind of nice. But look at just how much grind this deck has, and cards like Flage just finish you off eventually. And Chris kind of has, whatever he wants this turn. Worst case scenario, he can put a Flage on the stack, and if it gets countered, who cares? I've got a big graveyard. I'll get back to it again.
Yeah, I think Chris with a wealth of options here. That Bombardment proving particularly troublesome was, I think, clever of Chris to, again, put it in play early on when there was less interaction that Lyndon could have. Tamiyo is going to be gifted back over, but unless Lyndon can flip it over, I don't think more clues is what we're in the market for here. Lyndon's at 10 with that Bombardment still in play, and still plenty of options for Chris to kind of pass through here. So we'll see what Chris wants to do as he considers his options, but going to tap 4, and that's looking an awful lot like Flage. Never mind. The new Avatar card's going to hit the table instead. Or is it? Lyndon may have a counter here.
Yeah, I think what Chris is trying to respect here is the card Subtlety. Lyndon has 4 of it and 4 Force Negation, but Chris is probably going to assume that we at least went down on 1 or 2 forces here, so trying to kind of split the difference and already kind of got Subtlety once. So while this is a little bit less like, hey, I'm going to kill you in the next turn, it's a little better against the potential cards that he thinks Lyndon could be presenting, and it hits a land plus Discharge.
Yeah, that's pretty sick, and then obviously can play, I think that's Pyromancer is the third card under there that got exiled. So can play that until the end of his next turn as well. So has everything here. Had a land drop, has an instant to play on Lyndon's turn, and then has a creature to follow up with as well. Again, all with Bombardment still looming over this game. So Lyndon going to have to puzzle his way out of this, going to crack a clue, kick things off. That tells me at least that I don't think Tamiyo is getting flipped. I think Lyndon's digging desperately for answers here. Going to crack this fetch land as well.
Yeah, I would think Lyndon would probably not crack the clue if his plan was to flip the Tamiyo, right? Try and keep the hand low and hope Riddler draws 2. So definitely is looking for some specific card. Honestly, it might be like his Nile Spellbomb, like you talked about before. Just answer that Flage out of the board and then figure out how we're going to answer the rest of these problems. And this is what I meant too about these Psychic Frog decks kind of struggle. Once a couple things get on the board and they get under you, you need to answer the next threat and sort of what's already happening. And that can be a really tricky puzzle sometimes.
Yeah, I will say, you called it out right before we even started the show, but Legend of Roku, the new card from Avatar, looking really good in this spot, in this matchup. It is draw 3 cards and then some. Going to make a mana, and then, of course, I think if it ever flips, the game's basically over. So it's definitely leveraging some powerful new cards here. As Tamio is going to go ahead and get shot by, looks like Galvanic discharge. Yeah, Galvanic in the graveyard. So goodbye, Tamio. Not even going to get the option of trying to maybe flip it here with enough draws in a row. And Linden, once again, trying to puzzle things out. Preordain in hand. A couple more cards as well, but an enchantment, not the easiest thing traditionally for Grixis to deal with.
Yeah. And you're seeing Linden here kind of think like, am I supposed to just play this Riddler? Then the Flage comes. Do I represent having subtlety? Chris played around it last turn, right? So, because from Linden's perspective, Flage would have done everything that would have happened here, and we still would have gotten more cards later. So he kind of can probably read, okay, Chris is respecting subtlety. I don't have it. Is he just going to slam the door? And so I need to actually get on the board here and maybe hope to top deck. As it looks like we drew Preordain off the Riddler, but holding up something else, maybe something like an Unholy Heat in hand that can sort of answer the Flage in the short term.
Yep, Heat maybe, Spell Snare. Not nearly as good in the spot, but is another card that obviously Linda could have. And again, Chris kind of put to the same test. How do you want to sequence here?
Yeah, and getting this Arena of Glory is actually pretty huge. Remember, there's also +1 mana on this turn from the Fuko.
Yep. Just Guide of Souls. Just a little Guide of Souls.
Yeah.
What could possibly go wrong?
Little bait spell. Do you have like a Stern Scolding or something? Okay, no, you don't. Cool.
Also, as pretty good with the Arena, as you mentioned. Might be tough to get 3 energy, but you never know. Although, is it the Guide that has to attack for that to work?
No, it's just attacking.
Look at that. You could just get in there.
Yeah,
I know what cards do sometimes.
Yeah, luckily I helped make some of these ones, so I got them down. Yeah, much like Flage, my baby, as it comes down here. And this with the Arena of Glory is one of the more powerful things to pop out of MH3. Remember, the Fuko did generate a mana for those at home. We did tap enough, and now this Flage hits the battlefield, and this look like Linden has an Unholy Heat, because I imagine if he didn't, we'd probably be picking our cards up as we would be dead.
Very true, and there we go. That's the Unholy Heat that you suspected was there. Again, still getting sacrificed, so does not get exiled most critically, which obviously would have been much better against the recursive card like Flage. But still, Lightning Bolt when you come down, didn't get the attack trigger, but I don't think he'd be too unhappy, especially with Ocelot Pride as the final card here in the sequence, and that is enough. Linden scoops it up, the fist bump is exchanged, and Linden starting down 0-1. Chris Hart and the Boros Energy deck going to take our first win on camera.
Yeah, that life gain trigger from Flage dealing and gaining 3 with the City's Blessing there was exactly lethal. So Chris kind of had Linden checked.
Sick.
Yeah, great sequencing there from Chris too to sort of get that in. Got the life gain as well from the Flage entering. So just really well played there, and just shows kind of how this matchup can be a really big struggle. And if you're Linden, you're really hoping players don't show up with decks like this weekend. But we saw it's the second most played deck of the weekend, so we'll have to see if Linden can overcome this in the coming rounds.
Yeah, really nice. It's funny to see, Ocelot Pride, such a powerful one-drop, basically raised the alarm at the end there. But that was enough with the Goblin Bombardment that I think was a big thorn in the side of this Grixis deck. We saw it in both games. Linden really respected it, wanted to fire off a counterspell whenever he could. And it basically undid, I guess, alongside Blood Moon, 2 different enchantments. Undermining Grixis, yeah, that seems about right.
And that's one of the nice things too about having these cards as well, is we saw in a couple spots, Chris played it when Linden was holding up creature interaction, right? So Chris is like, okay, I won't get to the board now, but everything in the future is going to be so much harder for you. You have to have the Spell Snare now. And then if you start thinking about it, it's like, wait, so my opponent has to have Spell Snare, and they have to have a creature, and they have to have the lands to cast their threats to kill me. It just ends up in a recipe of being really hard for these kinds of decks to consistently beat. It's doable. Cards like Psychic Frog can run away with the game, but it's a really difficult matchup, and Chris played it incredibly well. So congratulations to him moving on to 1-0.
Yeah, good start to any tournament is picking up W in round 1. You may have noticed in the middle of this game, we did have another table. Unsurprisingly, the game we saw where an Ugin was cast against a player with 3 lands in play, that game has ended. So we actually don't have any games right now. We're going to yap on for a bit here as the round has, 15 minutes or so left in this round. Then, of course, we'll queue up round 2 in just a moment. Probably take a little breaky at some point. But we have some time to just kind of relax, chill out, lounge a bit here, Mason. I'm actually curious. Boros Energy, a deck we're probably going to see a decent amount of this tournament and potentially on camera as well. What matchups don't you want? If this is one you want, what matchups do you definitely not want to see as Boros Energy? Even though you do have game kind of against the field, what are you not hoping to play?
Okay, so like my TikTok answer is decks that don't play normal Magic, right? So
Yep,
if your
good
opponent's
answer.
belching you, storming you, neoforming you, even to some extent, sometimes like Tron can be a bit of an issue, especially if all his dust is in the deck. Amulet Titan, these are things that can be really big issues. And when you're not playing normal Magic, Boros Energy sort of defaults to being an aggro deck. And at the end of the day, Boros Energy is kind of like an aggressive Jund deck, right? So it has those draws, like we talked about before. It's like, yeah, I go Ragavan into, maybe a 2 and a 1 drop or a 3 drop, or I go double Ocelot Pride and I can run you over. But that is asking a lot of you, and you need to kill them before they kill you. And the secret to decks that don't play normal Magic is they kind of play quickly, right? And so it puts a
Yeah.
lot of pressure to have a lot of it early. So if you're Boros Energy, that's really what you don't want to play against. And you're really wanting to play against decks like what we just saw there that are kind of grindy, interactive, maybe trying to play 1 or 2 cards to kind of take over the game. And you're hopeful that your sort of Galvanic Discharge, Static Prison, Thraben Charms line up well enough against those to keep them at bay that you can do just what we saw there, get some early pressure, and then deal a little bit of damage with Flayed from Bombardment or Jonny to end the game.
Yeah, it makes sense. The honest deck is not happy against the dishonest decks and pretty happy against the honest ones there. So it makes sense. Potentially even see the mirror, which, that's the most honest Magic we could ask for, surely, here at RC Calgary. We're going to take a quick break here in round 1, but when we come back, it'll be round 2 and even more modern Magic coming up after this. Stay tuned.
maestro, conducting the show, committing my heart to tear me apart. Maestro, maestro, always in control. You chose the melody and play me like your symphony. Maestro, maestro, conducting the show. Now what? The tempo and start to crescendo. Maestro, maestro, always in control. You chose the melody and play me like your symphony. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, it's about time to let your expression. 5 and 6 and 7, 8, I'm coming for some recognition. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, I'm feeling shadows. Coming out, coming out, coming out, coming out, coming out.
Let's go. We the ones, we number one. Top runners, we the top guns. Tycoons making major moves on a major play. Major way when I'm in my groove, I can't lose. When we let's go, you better move. I got a bone to pick, no point to prove. We too hard like a bodyguard. Yeah, we standing tall like we on the Eiffel. Yeah, a shooting star, you know just how I go. Yeah, we up and we ain't been down yet. We ready for it, we militant. We linked up, now we the threats like blasting off. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. 6, 7, yeah, just begun. You don't wanna make me do it. You don't wanna make me do it. You don't wanna make me do it. Let's go. We up. Let's go. We now, not next. Oh no. Can't stop, won't stop. You know. Oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man. We up. Let's go. We came to win and let them know it's time to start the show. Can't stop, won't stop. You know. Oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man. Yeah. I broke guards and I do it large. Don't play yourself, I'll pull your card. Oh man, oh man, oh man. Gotta get it good, got a master plan. You know what it is, you know who I am. Top of the world in my hand. I'ma stand out, you will stand in. I refuse to lose, now you never win. Telling me that I won't get it, man, you must be out your beam. Yeah, I told you once before. I'm like Martin, I'm the king. My dog easy, say, hey flex. You know that we lit a cream. Might say, yeah, you know, but they can't get your beam. Blasting off. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. 6, 7, yeah, just begun. You don't wanna make me do it. You don't wanna make me do it. You don't wanna make me do it. No. You don't wanna ready for it. Yeah, this is it. Go! 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 Yeah, this is it. Go! Let's go! This is it. It's now or it's never. No plan with forever. It's now or it's never. Hey. It's down to the wire. Who gonna take the empire? It's down to the wire. This is it. Get ready for it. Get ready for it. Get ready for it. This is it. This is it. Go! 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 Yeah, this is it. Go! Let's go! This is it. Go! Go! This is it. Go!
Ooh.
Hello and welcome back, everyone, to RC Calgary, hosted by Face2Face Games. It is round two, just about to kick things off here. I'm Julian, pastry time cast, still joined by Mason MH3 Clark. Starting off strong in round one with your boys, Boris Energy getting the W. Let's see what round two has in store for us.
Yeah, it is going to be a pretty interesting round if we get the future matches we were looking at. And, one of the things that we can say too is, the round went a little long, but it wasn't all Amulet Titans players' faults. They get a lot of hate. I want to say it was only half their fault. So, don't worry. We're hoping to eliminate them with time. And that's just what happens,
Yeah, we'll certainly see how deep the Amulet players can go into the tournament. Although I imagine the Amulet players that are going to go far in a tournament like an RC are probably going to play pretty quickly. So I think you are correct. The time drop off should decrease, exponentially as the rounds roll on over. We do, of course, have plenty of exciting things to bring you here in both the modern format and here at this RC from Calgary. But I want to ask the important questions, Mason. A lot of discourse lately about the emotional support Poison Dart Frog. I wanted to ask you, if you were registering an emotional support card in your cyber, what would you bring?
Do I have to bring one? Is this like
No,
the
of
idea?
course not.
Okay. So I would not emotional support. Now I will say I have my tendencies and standards. So like for example, I like to joke with my friends negates my like safety blanket. It's like I'm not sure what my 15th card should be in my blue deck. I'll bring a negate, and they're like, it's not even that good. I'm like, shut up, it's pretty good, And engineered explosives is that in modern for me, where it's like I don't really know what my 15th card should be. I find myself like, moving my hand towards the colorless box and grabbing EE a lot. So those would be those. But if I had to pick like one of those cards, I'd probably pick Flage. That would be my emotional support card.
Yeah, pretty good card. I think for me, interestingly, would also be a god, different set, though very different templating. Karanos God of Storms, which is very fitting because a feature match is going to be Rob versus Nam. Yes, Rono Red Storm versus Blue White Control. And the exact makeup of these decks is going to make a pretty big difference in how this matchup plays out. But this is, at least for me personally, I know it may be weird to hear from someone that seems so wholesome, but I do love both Blue Eye Control and Storm, so I'm happy no matter what happens here in round two.
Yeah, Blue Eye Control, a deck that's like near and dear, I think, to many people's hearts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good time as we pull up the Storm deck here first to look at. But the Storm deck has sort of turned into like, this was a deck that was in Modern, was kind of on the fringes, disappeared for a long time, and has come back full force with MH3 with Ral. And then it's just kind of all over the place. Sometimes it seems like the best deck in Modern, excuse me. Other times it seems like, what are we doing here? And I think that sort of volatility, right, is sort of like why we don't see this deck as much as maybe we should be.
Yeah, definitely doesn't quite play out as deterministically as maybe the more powerful Storm decks in older formats, but certainly a lot of power here and a lot of consistency. Obviously, playing all red lands feels pretty good. Ruby Medallion printed in, hey, wait a second, that's your fault again, MH3, along with the other ones, also making this strategy quite a bit better. Some wishes here to grab a couple of one-offs. Some options there in the sideboard, splashing off of, looks like white and blue potentially, although those Surveil lands, the blue ones at least, are just for flavor, just for the extra Surveil. But Ral, to your point, definitely powering his deck all the way up. Funnily enough, like, with all the impulse style draw in this deck, this is actually not that different to like mono red pauper. You're just kind of hitting a different endpoint, right? Instead of just pointing a bunch of burn spells and goblins at your opponent, you're trying to play a bunch of spells and then grape shot them out. So definitely curious to see how this one navigates, because the blue eye control list, depending on what they're rolling, it can be real tough, because I suspect we'll see a little card called Arms Chance somewhere in the 75.
Yeah, and one of the things that's happened to Blue White Control is, as Modern has evolved, is it's sort of gotten rid of this idea of playing a beautiful game, right? Of like, I'm going to sit there and draw some cards, and it's like, I'm a prison deck. You can call me a control deck, I'm a prison, I'm going to lock you guys. You see 4 Orange Champs in the main deck that you highlighted. That is a card that people sideboard for the Storm matchup, and we're bringing for them along with Isochronic Scepter to sort of do it on repeat. So there is a real sort of timer on this game, and we even have some main deck cards like Force and Negation. Now, you have some awkward cards like Narset, isn't going to stop a lot of the card draw from the red deck, as it does use the bottling effect of exiling, letting you play to the end of the next turn. But we still have some annoyances there with Dazed undoing everything, including our graveyard, which is something the red deck really relies on. So this is going to be a very weird matchup. And that's before we even look at the sideboard. There's a lot of hate in the sideboard. We're going to pretend it's not even there right now. We're going to focus on winning game one.
Yeah, we'll take a look later. Obviously, some of the removal in blue-white control. No, I mean, not dead. Honestly, like Ral is a card you probably want to remove, and it stays in play until the red deck is ready to use it. So it's not like you can protect it by flipping it all that easily. You're mostly just trying to build up counters and then actually use it as like a mini Mind's Desire once you get enough loyalty after flipping to ultimate. So very curious to see how this all plays out. We definitely saw plenty of blue-white control. If anyone watch a little tournament called Pro Tour Edge of Eternities, which if you really like that top 8, have a nice little surprise for you all later on in the day. Someone who may or may not have top 8 at that event is going to be on a commentary. Very excited for that. But yeah, it's like a near and dear to my heart that Isochron Scepter and Arms Chant have found their way back together after genuinely close to 20 years in Extended, which is a format that obviously Modern kind of superseded, that now no longer exists. But it is fun to see this nouveau version of this deck. We're still trying to use that same absolutely filthy locket between Arms and Isochron Scepter with all these new tools, and as you said, much more proactive than the blue-white control decks of old, which does make me sad in some ways, but you are trying to win games in Modern, not, have the most fun. So I don't blame the players for kind of taking this angle when it comes to constructing their control decks these days.
Definitely. And speaking of the control decks construction, unfortunately for Nam, we are on a mold of 5 this game. So that's going to... Yeah, we have a Prismatic Ending, which can be good for stopping one of these mana cheat cards. But besides that, we don't have anything like the Orange Chant currently. Meanwhile, Rob just setting up with these Surveil lands here.
Yep, again, just going to sculpt for a few turns. You certainly can play through a pretty high number of interactive options as you go through, but I think seeing full Arms Chant in the main, it is open decklist, of course. Maybe you're going to want to go off sooner rather than later, especially if your opponent's going to double mulligan. Want to take advantage as best you can. Obviously, if they have it, they have it, but you got to do your best and see how you can navigate here. As now I'm going to go ahead and fetch away, finding their own Surveil lands. Everyone's favorite lands. Just adds shuffling and triggers to the stack indefinitely. Everyone loves it.
Yeah, it's really impressive, actually, just how much, this is something that's actually, as Orange Chant was setting up with Surveil. You love to see it if you're a Nam fan. But it's crazy to me, just imagine 2-3 years ago I told you your deck's going to play 2 or 3 tap lands that are just duels, right? You'd be like, well, what are they doing? Drawing me 2 or 3 cards? It's like, no, they kind of draw a card sometimes. And it's just actually very good.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, Rusum's playing they have some white cards in the sideboard, does Rob, but there's red lands red-blue lands that just don't do anything other than tap for red mana and Surveil one, and that is good enough in both Modern and good enough for Legacy as well. It's really sweet lands that I think have stood the test of time and then some. As control player making land drops, always a good thing for them to see. And I'm going to start with the first threat. That one's pretty good. Going to respond by Valakut Awakening here. Going to cash in some cards here with Teferi on the stack.
Yeah,
so cashing in.
Interesting. Sort of forced to do it here if you're going to do it because Teferi's going to lock this out. And it looks like Rob is not in love with the hand, but does have at least some things that are pretty clear to keep. And yeah, that's going to be 3 cards back. That's a lot of cards.
Yep, and unfortunately, unlike Wheel of Fortune, this is a wheel-esque effect. These go on the bottom of your library. Would love to have them in the graveyard for a card like Past in Flames, but not how the card works, as it turns out. Isn't instant, so some advantages there in this spot against a card like Wheel of Fortune, which obviously is not legal in Modern, much to my chagrin. But looking tough already. Going to have to navigate through whatever interaction Nam has, and as we already know, and as Rob probably suspects, there is already an Arms Chant in the hand. As we're going to play Artist Town, I believe here.
Now, Artist Talent, we talked about a lot of the card draw in Rob's deck being like this bottle effect like we see with Ren's Resolve. Artist Talent is actual card draw. So if we get a Narset, that is going to turn that card off for the most part. It does have other modes if you spend more mana, but that's something that now Nam is like, ooh, thank you. If I draw Narset, it's a bit better than it was a second ago.
Yeah, and one of the nice things, one of the ways to overwhelm control is obviously to get up on cards on them, and these red card draw spells are pretty close to real card draw spells. So Rob could certainly build up a critical mass and try and get through, maybe the first Arms Chant and then go again. I'm curious, does Rob have a card like, what was I thinking of? Galvanic Relay is the card that would be good in this kind of spot, depending on when Arms Chant gets cards, because that's the minigame we're going to have to start playing. If Rob suspects there's an Arms Chant, when does Nam choose to pull the trigger? Because it is, you make a lot of decisions if you're trying to disrupt your Storm opponent mid-combo. Otherwise, you just cast it in their upkeep and trying to buy some time, which may also be good enough. As by the way, there's a second Arms Chant in Nam's hand.
Yeah, the second Orb Chant lets Nam be a little bit, more frivolous with it and be sort of like, okay, I'm gonna, cast this now, sort of let you cast a couple spells. I don't need to time it perfectly, just kind of waste. Then you'll have to rebuild from here. A lot of times we do see in response to Past in Flames as just sort of like, hey, turn that card off, and that is how they typically get to their storm kill.
Yeah, both one of the best engines for them to win and one of the best ways to get through a bunch of counterspells if your opponent has interactions. So I'm going to shut that all off. Artist Talent doing a really good job of filtering a bunch of cards, and Ruby Medallion did resolve. So more bottling is happening. Land's going to be found off the top there in exile. And we are going to keep casting spells here, but again, going to be tough to find an actual kill. Looks like a lot of sculpting here for Rob. See how this turn kind of ends. Is Valakut Awakening going to hit the bin? Cards get drawn. Flip on over. There's a Ral. It's the kind of card we're looking for.
Notably, remember, Nam did just pick up Kahira on the last turn, sort of signaling we're trying to find a way to actually, get towards winning the game. Feels like the game's a little bit locked up, and also just want to kind of lower the shields here. Could have left up something like Prismatic Ending and done the end of turn on the talent or potential Ruby Medallion. Ah, yes. The tracker to know which cards are playable this turn or potentially playable in the next turn.
Gotta love Impulse versus Bottle. I think that's the that's the general distinction, but can get a little confusing. Good to see Rob got all of the little bonus tokens here in the feature match area. Certainly helps him. I'm sure certainly helps me here at home, and any of you out there watching on stream. Very curious to see how we navigate around all these very scary looking spells, but Rob seems confident, knows the matchup, knows the potential pitfalls. So we'll see how well they can do avoiding them there. As that is a treasure token. Thanks to Strike It Rich. And there's Kahira. The beatdown will begin.
Yeah, and I like this from Nam. Could have done something like Prismatic Ending on the talent, or maybe even the medallion, or hold it. You have a Solitude to answer the Ral, so that one's kind of, the first one's at least checked at the moment pretty easily. But get this Kahira down and just try to win the game. And yeah, I love this here. Start off with your second Orange Chant. Just burn one to get some time to untap with all your mana and not have to worry about this Ral or anything hitting the graveyard. Or hitting the play, excuse me.
Yeah, again, has 4, knows he can use a couple there. So Round Monsoon Mage. Gonna be rendered a little less effective. Does go back in, just stay in exile, excuse me. Thanks to that Arms Chant. Pretty effective little counterspell, kind of. If you want to think of it that way. Stays in Suspend somewhat. There'll be some players familiar with how those used to work out all the way back in Time Spiral. I'm definitely dating myself there. As Kahira bashing on in once more. There is a clock on this game. I think it's funny to call this the proactive line from the Blue Control deck, but it is. A few turns for Rob to kind of figure it out, but again, Nam very, very, very happy, very calm with how the game is going right now. Everything's coming up Blue-White Control. Plenty of cards in hand, Teferi on board, a clock in play, and lots for the Storm player to try and navigate here. And Medallion, that going away that sucks. Can't even do anything with Teferi in play. Lost one of your best ways to really cheat on mana, and we're just going to do it all. Never mind.
Yeah,
you're going to be the next card.
Yeah, and so we can't. Yeah, Teferi gets us. Fair enough.
Everybody gets one. Okay, yep, you got me. You remembered your Teferi. That's nice. No, an honest mistake, I'm sure, from Rob. And just going to crack a lance, you draw a card. It's desperate times when somebody can't even sit in the bin. Untap. I mean, there's only one mana left over untapped on the Blue Control set. What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, and from Rob's perspective, he might suspect something like another Orange Chain, especially when that last one was used, but he kind of has to maybe play like there isn't if he's going to continue forward. As here's Ren's Resolve.
All right, first Ral trigger of the game. Does also discount things similar to Medallions. Again, it's quite incredible that they printed all of this text on this card, but it certainly has made the Ruby Storm deck significantly more viable in Modern than maybe the Storm decks of old. And we're going to bottle some cards and pass it on over. No, maybe still going. I think want to try and commit something here. I mean, if you suspect another Arms Chant here, I think you do want to make them play it if you can.
Ooh, our little Storm counters popped up on the screen.
I love that. Playing the land. Still got some time here. Got a treasure in play as well. Metamorphose. That card's really good with Ral in play. Make a mana, draw a card. Trigger Ral.
And you see Nam thinking about maybe pitching this Orange Chant to the Solitude just to get rid of the Ral.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what would happen What are you afraid of if you lose your arms chant there? I guess you could still. It feels really hard to lose if Rao's in play. Not just because Rao's obviously a win condition, but Rao is also responsible for all the discounts, right? You already took out the medallion with your prismatic ending. Does feel like cutting off a lot of mana from the Ruby Storm deck at this point is where you want to be, but definitely a tough decision because if Orange Chant's your only white card in hand, that is a big tool to lose in this kind of matchup.
Yeah, and there's a weird thing too where Nam can like if Rob flips the Ral and like as soon as he does ults it and loses it and Nam just responds with the Orange Chant, he kind of kills the Ral in a weird way
Yeah,
and gets through a lot of Rob's stuff. So as long as the Passing Flame doesn't hit, then he's kind of solved that issue. The problem is, what if Rob does a bunch of Rens Resolves and Manamorphoses, right? And that's how he flips the Ral. So that's kind of the mini game Nam's trying to figure out here of what do I care more about?
yeah, interesting to think about. Obviously, could still hit the ult if you get enough cards, but not going to be able to cast any of them really. Chant says you cannot cast spells. That is illegal. And so we keep going. Manamorphose once more. And again, same spot, especially with Teferi in play. It's gross. Like you can't even respond to try and flip it or something like that. And looks like we're going to commit the Arms Chant here. Rob having 3 cards in hand and a card to play next turn in bottle. Doesn't seem too bad, all things considered. Going to draw a card here as well if the Manamorphose, assuming it resolves. Arms Chant does not stop that from happening. And Rob says, okay. Mix a mana, draw a card, and pass the turn. Maybe hoping for enough Ral flips to get him low so Kaihiro would finish the game.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely beat players from them pinging themselves.
It is possible. All right, Teferi going up. Never mind, going down. That Ral back in hand where it belongs. Kaihiro coming back in. Teferi down to 3, drawing a card as well. And once again, we ship the turn back with all the mana available. Look, all the permanents are untapped. Planeswalkers don't often tap. Kaihiro has Vigilance. This is full-on Drogo gaming here from Namdang.
This is what Nam wants. And Nam got a card he really wanted, which was Consult the Star Charts. Not only is it a great way to refuel if Rob doesn't present a real problem, but it's also a blue card to pitch the Force Negation, and you could hard cast the Solitude here to answer the Ral that we know is in hand for Rob. And with Teferi, you can't flip the Ral in response with an instant like we see so often in this deck against removal.
Yeah, really good stuff there. Again, feeling very confident. Teferi is just such a nice little safety blanket. Like nothing feels like it can ever go wrong. And as a long time dig through time enjoyer, Consult the Star Charts, definitely a card after my own heart. As Rao's going to come back down here for Rob. This one does not get discounted, so going to have to pay full for the artist talent, but deciding that the filtering is worth it here. And again, this one also can't get shot by Solitude, so an unreasonable bit of setup here for Rob, but again, now I'm kind of waiting. How much are you committing? Want to try and, deal the maximum amount of damage, so to speak. Want Rob to commit as many cards as possible before things can go wrong. Is Pyretic Ritual going to be put on the stack here? Trigger.
Yeah, one of the weird things about Rob having so much mana too is that it's like the Ral discount matters, right? Like this was obviously a 1 mana ritual, much stronger, but it isn't the end of the world like it would be before to like let them have that trigger. So looks like evens his tails. That's good to know for our future interactions.
That is good to know. Takes the damage. Still the artist talent trigger to resolve and can kind of build your own medallion here if we want to level up the artist talent. Let's look like exactly what is happening here. So I like that line from Rob, just committing a ritual, suspecting that Ral was going to get, if it got bounced, it's probably not living through the turn. So bait in air quotes out a potential removal spell. Give yourself another medallion-esque thing. Make a land drop, pass the turn. Keep triggering, keep filtering. Storm counts 3. Thank you, production. We might just be going here. Pyretic Ritual. Rob actually committing more because, again, the artist talent actually making it so you can kind of filter through a deck. Drew another ritual. Still keeps filtering cards. Doesn't draw cards, doesn't net cards this way, but if you can find another draw spell or another bottle spell of some kind, there's something here potentially.
Yeah, I think we used one of the rituals to up the artist talent.
Yes, we did.
As well. So yeah, so now we're having the discount here. Nam does have Force Negation, and it's Past in Flames is the card that Rob really wants to win if he's going to win this turn, but Nam has it checked.
Yeah, usually Past in Flames is actually quite good against counterspells when you have an excess of mana, which is kind of where Rob might end up in this game. But the exile part of Force Negation, shutting off the flashback of Past in Flames, is a dagger to the hearts of Storm players everywhere. Feels bad, man. Like, come on. I spent so long beating Force of Will with Past in Flames, and now this happens to me. Ooh, actually going to Force Negation the Reckless Impulse there. Oh, we go again. Glimpse of the Unthinkable?
Yeah, and this is the card that gives you the most looks. As to the exact mana, I'm not sure, but we do have a treasure, so no matter what, there's at least one.
I like the production just like mashing the zone counter as it keeps on going. There is another draw spell and a Ral in the exile. Obviously, Ral doesn't get discounted. It's not a Ruby Medallion in play. It's an artist talent. Only non-creature spells are going to be costing one less. But there is a lot here for Rob to potentially try and cook. I think game one, I mean, I don't know if game one or game two is easier to win, but we're going to play a ritual here. That's going to net some more mana. That should be 3 at least. And there's Ral. 1 floating. That's enough to keep bottling. Are we doing it here? There's so many spells that get played.
Well, yeah, I think the big thing is your Ral will still storm flip, right? Like,
Yes.
how many of these are instants and sorceries is our real question. The majority of them are, because we cast 2 Rals, that's 2 of the storm, and I believe everything else would count towards Ral here. So, yeah, we're flipping, and this is devastating.
Yeah, what's the number of loyalty? How much do we end up making here? That's going to be the big question. We want the number to be at least 8. Strike it rich. Rals. It doesn't trigger. It's as enter you get loyalty based on things that happened. Going to 1, that must mean we're ulting.
Yeah, and technically Nam can live from here if Rob gets very unlucky, but Rob needs to get very unlucky.
Oh, that's not very unlucky. That is very, very good. Goodbye.
Oh yeah, and you see Nam there kind of tilt his head like, was I supposed to fight over the impulse? Like what am I supposed to do? And those are the tough spots. It's like it looks like just enough mana to kind of go, and if we hit perfectly, and Nam decided like, okay, try to have the perfects, and he did. As we also see Nam slam a bunch of cards down on the table from the sideboard.
Yeah, definitely going to be taking a look at the sideboard spinners, but game 1. Not stolen away, I will say, but piloted very nicely there by our Storm player, Rob. Getting it done with the Ral flip. I mean, that is one card you cannot force of negation. So pretty good on that turn. That very long Storm turns. We'll take a look here at the blue-white sideboard to kick things off. We already mentioned the Arms Chance. It does get better. 3 High Noons in the sideboard as well, the standout cards in this matchup.
Yeah, High Noon's pretty huge. Surgical Extraction also pretty reasonable. The Wish makes it so you're never going to be able to like fully remove like a Grape Shot, but sometimes hitting Past in Flames is nice. Also, if you are able to counter a Ral, then get in the graveyard, then boom, you can Surgical that. We saw how important that can be. So it's not as lights out as a card like High Noon, but surprisingly good. And Ashiok. Also, sometimes I see players bring this in if they have enough cards in their main deck that they don't love in the matchup, just because it does fight over the graveyard and turns off fetch lands. It's not, some slam, High Noon level card, but we might see Nam bring it in here on the play with being like, yeah, actually, I've got these verdicts I don't really like. Maybe I want to get a couple more kill spells out of my deck, and I'll just bring this in and hope to get a little lucky.
Yeah, I think looking at this deck another time, and Mystical Disputes in the board is another permission spell. Not great against the mono red deck. Obviously, want the spells to be blue there. Spells know they're going to have some targets, but the thing that's sticking out to me now actually is that there is not a lot of permission in this blue white deck. It is those 2 Force Negations and 2 Spell Snares. That is basically it, unless you want to play bad cancel with Mystical Dispute, because I don't think you're bringing in Consign here. That doesn't do all that much. Although I guess you could hit a Storm trigger if you want, but that seems really loose.
Yeah, sometimes you see people try and do that. It doesn't always work. I think you can also respond to the Ral trigger before it happens, but that all requires them being at the very end of their cycle. It is a kind of, an all-in sort of thing. I think we have enough good cards in our main deck that we can go without the Consign.
Yeah, especially because, you already have the 4 Arms Chant. That's the best card probably for the matchup. We'll take a look here at Rob's sideboard. Silence may be sticking out, but again, not that much permission to try and navigate there. Anything interesting you see there, Mason?
I think silence is probably like the big one, like you mentioned there. That's just a way for us to kind of be like, hey, I'm going to play this. And if you have a chant where you have a counter spell, you have to act now, or I'm going to go off. And that's a great way to sort of, not get got. We saw a couple times in that game how we went to the middle of the turn of storming and then we saw a chant happen, right? And it was sort of like, oh, okay, well, I guess I have to stop now. That's awkward. This makes that a little less awkward, and also can be a good way to make sure you don't lose your Past in Flames in the middle of going off. You flip a silence and you have an extra mana laying around, you can just fire that off and be like, okay, is this Past in Flames going to actually resolve? And I don't lose maybe one of my key cards that actually does matter. As we talked about at the beginning of this round, Blue-White Control has abandoned the idea of a beautiful game. No longer are we picking up our, Jace the Mind Sculptors and drawing a couple cards. We are trying to lock you out, and having a way to kind of fight through that lock is very appealing. And I imagine we'll see that, and maybe something, like one of these malfunctions could come in. If you think there's going to be something that you can change the target. I've seen players do that sort of thing, but you want to keep it clean and small typically when sideboarding with a Storm deck.
Yeah, it does have wishes too, although it's a little tricky with only 2 to access some answers. Like if there is an Ice Concept in play, you need to try and answer. You can maybe sometimes get around it with an instant. If Teferi isn't in play, that's a big if in that particular scenario. But plenty of answers for potential problems. Also, Empty the Warren's something we can maybe look at there. But we'll talk about that as we get back. So we're going to have a look at the other table for now. Is it Prowess versus another blue-white control deck? Seems to be a relatively popular choice, if our on-camera rounds are to be believed.
Yeah, and blue-white control has a couple matchups that are really good in Modern right now. It's definitely kind of like a deck that's like we talked about the Grixis deck in round 1, sort of being like, hey, I think the metagame looks like this, so I'm picking this deck. It's not like I'm a Rob Howe, you play me every weekend. And while some control players do that because they just love blue-white control, love of the game moment, I think a lot of players this weekend are identifying like, hey, I think, just Orange Chant's really well positioned. I think having these locks outs and these answers to all these creatures is really good. I'm going to beat these, Jeskai, Blinky, Boros Energy decks this way, ideally.
Well, I see the control player with many lands in play, and I do see 2 slick shot show-offs. I think they're plotted because they did not turn sideways last turn, but we can find out in a moment. Corey Steelcutter also on the table. Not bad options here for the Is It Prowess player to try and punch through, but typically when the control player has this many lands, you're usually in trouble.
Yeah, and it looks like Andrew's maybe trying to set up Gyreach Sanitarium to be up, so maybe has something like a Wrath and... Okay.
Okay. Lots of maneuvering of the lands around here, but Teferi is going to be the first cut. Also, shout out to production. Arms Chant kicked is the reason those slick shot show-offs that are in play did not go sideways. Much to their chagrin. Would have loved to get in the red zone, deal some more damage, but instead it's Teferi and the blue-red control play with 2 days undoings in the exile zone. I can spot just barely at the top of the table there. Seems like we've had some problems, but still plenty of cards in the Prowess player's hands, so not going to be Jova, although Supreme Verdict and Force Negation looking like pretty good ways to at least reset this board if you need to.
Yeah, the real question here really is what's Andrew's life total at, right? If we're at like 8, 9, then we might just be in some real trouble. If we're sort of, in the double digits, we're probably looking pretty great.
I have to see. Prowess obviously known for its ability to throw lightning bolts and lightning bolt adjacent things at your face, whether they are creatures or they are spells. But we'll start by cracking your lands here. I have to imagine, given the texture of this game, just what I can see from the board, that I don't think Andrew's life total is that healthy on the blue-white side. But we'll find out together, which is always the fun of jumping between another table. See if Isaac Mar can navigate through what looks to be the late stages of this game before the control player locks them out. In, that one's a land. Not interested. That one doesn't deal damage right now. Go again. Again, a lot of cards in hand here, so plenty of options to pick from. Have the Corey Steelcutter in hand that got bounced by Teferi as well. But not that much mana.
I wonder how, what happened right before we came in was maybe Andrew cast the days I'm doing, found the Orange Chant, and then that's sort of because otherwise it's such a weird situation to have so many cards, with so few lands. That doesn't really normally work out that way. But we're going to go back over here to our main feature.
Mystery unsolved. All right, we're back. Storm versus Blue-White Control once again. We'll see if we can spot some sideboard cards as we keep on going through. I did see a Solitude still, though, so Namdang wanting some removal against the Ral Ruby Medallion on turn 2, though. That feels good. And get that out of here immediately. March of Otherworldly Light. Going to take that out of the game.
Oh, and Narset off the Gyreach Sanitarium. That's a little mini lock in play now.
Yeah. Takes a little while, but you want to walk the people through that one? Hey, he's surgical, by the way. Shame the Ruby Medallion got exiled by by March, sorry.
Yeah, you would have very much liked to just remove those from the deck. So the way the lock works is Narset says you can't draw more than 1 card a turn. So with Gyreach Sanitarium, after they draw for turn, you activate it, and then you both loot, but draw a card, discard. Since you've already drawn your 1 card for turn, you're no longer allowed to draw any cards, so you just discard 1.
Slowly but surely, you manage to shut out the cards that Rob is taking a very aggressive line here. 3 mana ritual, Ral, and we're going to get our rituals exile. What's in your hand? I want to see. That's I'm going to call it medium juiced with 1 mana floating.
Yeah, this Manamorphose is going to do some heavy lifting. I like this line from Nam. Just remove these rituals out of the deck and sort of force him to have the other ritual. Obviously, there's for the other one, because we use this one, but this is sort of Nam's best bet, I think, to actually kind of stop the madness here and then hope that Narset can find the next answer for this Ral and then lock the game up.
Yeah, didn't know at the time as well, but there's also Passing Flames in Rob's hand, so taking a ritual out of the graveyard also pretty powerful as it turns out. The other thing that I'm thinking is that Nam might have a Force of Negation in hand and just wants the info. Like, what are you doing with the rest of your turn? What spell do I need to counter to stop you potentially? So lots of different angles here, but I do like this. Just Surgical is just one of those cards that everyone wants to do the dream scenario, and that's just not how the card works. You should just get some value when you're bringing this card in, because it has, pretty narrow uses in a lot of cases. And Narset going to get Grape Shot is the line here for Rob.
Okay, I like this a lot from Rob. Doesn't think he can actually combo off, so just get the Narset off the board just in case, your Ral is doomed and be able to keep playing the game. And that is one of the nice things about this Mono Red Storm deck is it does have a lot of redraw effects. So if you get to continue playing, you can kind of start from nothing and end with a win.
Oh, there's a Solitude. I think 2 Solitudes actually combined there to exile that Ral. And Narset is back. Narset 2 Electric Boogaloo going to cause similar problems again. Rob has only so many cards, and Nam is basically saying, look, I'm going to run you out of cards with this Garage Sanitarium eventually. I'm just trying to hope you don't combo me off before then, as looks like Rob's going to show the cards one more time. Very sporting there to just make sure, hey, you do have this information. I'll show you it for one last time. You've wrote them all down, and now we're going to see if we can't go again, draw a Ruby Medallion off the top, and just going to pass the turn.
Yeah, and you saw a very heads-up line there from Nam. Didn't minus the Narset. It lost basically a card, right? Uh-oh, that's bad. But played around Grape Shot being kind of cast once again. Because we could have gone, like other Ritual into Passing Flames into Grape Shot this Narset, and then Nam wouldn't have a lock piece anymore. And just top decks the High Nude. Scammer Squats at it again.
Yeah, that's wild. Can only cast one spell. Just Manamorphosis to cantrip there. The other card in Nam's hand, by the way, with that Narset in play, pretty confident it's a Day's Undoing. So things are going from bad to worse here, and Rob is dealing with the problems, but there are just so many problems. Unless this is a turn we can find. There's a Ren's Resolve going to kick things off. That's a very good hit. Finds a land, plays it, Manamorphose. Are we just going to go for it here?
Well, I think we're not allowed to draw off the Morphos, but you can use on the opponent's turn to get
true.
a little cantripping here. You can play it to get 2, so there's a world. Ooh. You were right about the Day's Undoing, and it does seem to be undoing Rob's hopes and dreams.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're right. Needed more sources of bottling or exile draw to kind of keep that turn going. That little cantrip, despite making mana, not going to be able to draw the extra cards off thanks to Narset, or I guess no thanks to Narset. So instead, we are just going to go back, and everyone's going to shuffle their hands and draw a fresh 7, and it's so fun and exciting. I love when the game resets. Unfortunately for Rob, he's only going to get to draw 1 card in this situation. Although I guess can cast the Manamorphose. It's actually in exile right now. Oh, they can't draw because of Narset. Man, this card sucks.
Yeah, you can't draw because of Narset, and weirdly, Day's Undoing ends the turn.
Oh,
so the one good thing is Nam doesn't get to play a land. Got that going for you. He's a little stuck on lands at the moment. Yeah. Unfortunately, for those at home, yes, if he did have a Teferi Time Revel, he could do that on Rob's turn to end his turn. Very cool. So
very cool. Just a casual mind time twister. That seems decent. Manamorphose going to get cast anyway. Can't draw the card. Makes the mana. Says, off you go.
Great play from Rob. Makes his Passing Flames in the future have another card.
Yeah, definitely heads up play again. These little edges are going to matter. This is a tough game. I mean, so many different permanents on both sides got navigated here, and it just feels like with the Gaia Reach and the Narset, and now that Day's Undoing, and now the Teferi. Oh, boy. Are we just bouncing the Ruby Medallion? That's so rude. Tick down Narset first. Get some info. And yep, he's going to bounce the Medallion. Good luck winning this game.
Oh, and Nam did bring in at least one of the consigns, which does hit this Medallion. Looks like, oh no, Nam has to move to discard. That's brutal for him.
Just got the draw through. Feels bad, man. Sunbaked Candy going to hit the bin. Rob needs a redraw. A little more than that, I think, is in store here, but it is possible. I'm going to say it's unlikely, but it certainly is possible. As embarrassment of riches for the blue-white control player. We're just going to play a Ruby Medallion, get it countered, and go cry at home, I suppose. Never mind, another one. Does stick a Medallion. That is helpful, but only 2 cards left for the Ruby Storm player, and so many more than that for the blue-white control player.
Yeah, we're seeing Nam move very quickly this game. He's been very kind of, making sure I don't walk in anything. He feels very confident and wants to close this game out ASAP.
And again, that Sanitarium that got played as, I think, land number 3 in this game, ready to roll still if we want to start taking those cards away. And eventually, I mean, no matter how good a Ruby Storm pilot you are, with the Fairy, Narset, and the Sanitarium in play, you cannot win. You will just have no cards ever for the rest of the game. It's, not quite the Orange Chant Scepter lock that we often see from these Blue control decks, but it does a reasonably good impression, I would say.
Yeah, and this is a really tough spot for Rob as well. Of if I start playing cards and I don't win, then I have no hand, so the Sanitarium is fully locked. You see,
Yep.
Nam waits there because there's a couple cards. He doesn't want to let Rob have any decisions to make, and Rob also knows, well, if I don't go for it, then what am I going to do? Like I am going to bleed. So he had about one turn to plan, realizes the hand can't do it, and just picks the cards up.
Yep, I think a good concession. Only 20 minutes left in the round game. I mean, it's likely going to end before that happens, but do want to have some considerations for playing the final game because your chances of winning that game basically zero at that point. As we pop back to where we were before, we have a new game. I wonder which player is up. We'll find out in just a moment, I'm sure, but it's Dragon's Red Channel versus High Noon.
All right, so it does look like Isaac won at least that last game that we saw as Andrew is on the play. But I wonder, are we in a game 3 situation here? Prowess, pretty quick deck.
That's very true. Dragon's Red Channel definitely contributing to that kind of thing. Gonna pop a land here, take a damage, and put a land into play. What's next? What fun do we have? Only one spell a turn, but better make it a good one. Don't need that many to flip the Dragon's Red Channel over and get the good times rolling. High Noon's not going to... Well, I mean, technically it could stop the Dragon's Red Channel later, but it's not going to do that much work. Unholy Heat to the bin. Mishra's Bauble in. One card away from Delirium, I believe. Does get a look at the next card, though. Holds it nice and close. And then Andrew's going to put it back on top of the library as Dragon's Red Channel swings in for one.
Space. the Bounding Spring. Standard players know how good that card is against red aggressive strategies.
The Fairy looks to be the choice here. Hallowed Fountain in hand. Plays the Planeswalker with only 2 mana. Pretty insane.
Could have finished resolving the Fretch as Mystical Dispute was one of the last cards left there for Isaac. And a High Noon giveth, High Noon taketh away.
That's true. The old Arcane Lab. No, I can't play my own counterspell. Although not many you could play for free on your own turn here. So Teferi is going to hit the bin. And Dragon's Red Channel is going to keep on rumbling in. Looks like we're considering... Oh, Dragon's Red Channel, of course. The Surveil that the card does that makes it so good. Artifact, instant land. I'm missing one card type if my brain is working. First iteration, that's going to do it.
Yeah, and you're kind of weirdly hoping to hit like a land here and some good spell to put in hand.
Is Mishra's Bauble good? Because we did hit a land.
Mishra's Bauble is awkward. Yeah, it is your only spell for the turn off the High Noon, but obviously it's a redraw, so this is one of the awkward things of like I can play a little bit through a High Noon, but I have to kind of make sure my plays are impactful when I'm playing.
Yeah, and thanks to Delirium, it is your first time at Fight Club Dragon's Red Channel, so you must fight. Rumble's in for 3 now, though, so significantly better. Also flies for what it's worth. Is that good? It seems good. That's blue-eye control. Definitely under pressure here, even with the High Noon in play. Trying to slow the game down. Beza, the great equalizer perhaps here. Good enough in standard, good enough for modern. We'll have to see. You're going to start by drawing a card.
Yeah, draw a card. That's great. That's really good.
Funny, because I can't see the life total, but as soon as the pen goes to the life pad, I'm like, I know exactly what's happening here.
Yeah. And this is one of those things you see from Beza, when it interacts with like Shock or Pain lands as it did in the last standard. Sometimes, it's like, oh, I'll take 1. Oh, I had 2 planes. Oops. Well, it's fine. I'll gain 4 life now, because I'm now behind you. Really good card when the game is slower. And with High Noon, the game is always slower.
I do like High Noon. I think I'm revealing a lot about myself on this broadcast already. It's only round 2, by the way, but given the things I've said I've enjoyed about Magic, Blue-Eye Control with Scepter Chant, High Noon, and Storm, I can understand for some people out there that maybe have some consternation, but don't worry, I'll be unbiased and chirpy all throughout the weekend. We have so much Modern lined up for you on Saturday and Sunday. As we pop back to our feature map, Raoul is back in play on the play. That is something you'll love to see if you're cheering for Rob here and the Ruby Storm list. So what's left? Look at the card. We're surveilling away. Decisions. Oh, never mind. Draws a flooded strand, decides does in fact want the land, going to play a plains, and High Noon. Also pretty good in this matchup. Better, I would say, actually, than the other one we just saw.
Yeah, this forces one of those prismatic endings that we saw. Rob has at least one in the main deck. I'm going to go looking for it.
Only spell per turn is this impulse, but you can still play those cards later. So does line up relatively nicely. We'll see if it resolves. That seems to be the current conversation that's happening on the stack. And I am just going to double check that this is bottle and not exile. It is. End of next turn, you may play those cards. So stashing them away for later is Rob. Although again, still have to navigate the High Noon. Ooh, we're flipping. I actually really like this line.
Yeah, great play there from Rob. If you're going to get it locked underneath the High Noon, this is a much better way to gain the loyalty. You know, with one extra, that's fine. And we actually found the prismatic ending. So a little awkward when it comes to that play, but a great way to sort of hedge around getting unlucky and not finding that card.
Yep, going to do Ral manual style this game. Perhaps does still act as a medallion style effect. So you do have to tick it up for that to happen, at least to your next turn, but still gets the job done from that regard. In that regard. Ready. Off to the bin goes the land. Going to do a little bit of filtering here with the Surveil land. Fancy elegant parlor. And then interesting to see. I mean, actually, I was going to say interesting, but I can't imagine there's many decisions other than I will point this prismatic ending at your High Noon. Because I think winning under it is going to be challenging. Not a challenge that Ruby Stone player wants to partake in, I think. If you put a medallion in the graveyard off that Surveil. Manamorphose, good to go. Draw a card at the end of the turn. Again, only one each turn, but that is each turn. As Nam's like, what does this card do? Just checking. I know the numbers -8. Just want to make sure that's still true. Land in play. Take up rel. And ending in cost reduction is funny with the Sunburst, but kind of works out to be the same at the end of the day. Going to point this at there, and then Celestial Purge. Going to get pointed at Ral. That is nifty that works even when Ral's flipped over. So Ral's going to go bye-bye.
Yeah, interesting spot here for Rob. All of his spells are cost reduct for the turn still. So he could go like Ritual into Ral in order to like go off and try and win, but would need that sort of sequence of things. Could just use this turn to set up, as we've seen happen so much in this matchup. And that is a lot of it from Rob's side, is I kind of set up and try and pick the right battle. And Nam's on the other side trying to figure out when am I supposed to, get the min-max of my value here.
Yeah, it's funny that I mentioned, I think Galvanic Relay in game 1 is a card that is playable in this format and would seem quite good against control because that is true in other formats. But I actually think the way Ruby Storm is designed with all these bottle effects already, it actually just kind of gets to play a bunch of that effect already. So it's cool to see Rob knows he has to grind in this matchup and just consistently staying up in cards, trying to put pressure on, and Nam is forced to find answers. Obviously, if Nam finds a true lock of some kind or even half of one, that's going to be problematic for the Storm player to win through, but that does take some time. Rob does have answers to try and take out the problematic permanents. So we've already seen one pretty grindy game 1 win out of the Storm deck. We'll see if we can find another one here, but back to Namdang's turn we go, and I see a Narset in hand. That looks pretty good in all these spots. And there's the second Narset going to go down first. There's a backup one here in case we need it later.
Yeah, and there is that Days Undoing in hand. So Nam is working towards sort of undoing all of the cards in Rob's hand.
Revealed
kind of the window.
Yeah, this is a window. I mean, again, can't draw extra cards, as we've seen already, but Ruby Medallion is going to contribute towards the goal of trying to go off here. Manamorphose, going to start the chain. Narset says no. Rob says okay, makes 2 mana instead. But again, the exile effects will work here. So how many of those does Rob have access to? Going to play a ritual. We are trying to go off here. You don't commit all this mana and not try and do something.
Yeah, and we see Rob has the Ral and has the Past in Flames. Now, we know Nam is on stone cold and nothing here when it comes to interacting. Consult the star charts, a bunch of Planeswalkers, and Days Undoing. That is the awkward part of having a deck that is full of, sort of A plus B equals prison. Sometimes you have a bunch of the A's and none of the B's.
That's true, and Storm is 4, instant sorcery count is 3, if I recall correctly. Manamorphose Metamorphosis, Ritual, Ruby Medallion, and now this Passing Flames, and then Ral is actually going to be spell number 5 as it goes on the stack. We start flipping. Passing Flames is active, and spells are reduced by 2, which doesn't really matter that much. Although, funnily enough, it would only maybe matter for the flashback of Passing Flames if that is something that was necessary. But Piff is active, so this turn is looking good for Rob if he can find enough. Also, a Silence in hand. How much mana does Rob have floating? I don't think he can afford to pay the white man. No, never mind. He must have some because that land is not getting tapped as his ritual comes out of the graveyard. I'm kind of surprised to not see a Silence here. Because the only card that really causes problems at this point is Arms Chant. But I guess at this point it would have been cast. Also appreciate that there's a token for everything for Rob. Has a Past in Flames token now too. These are the instant sorceries I can cast. Here's a ritual. That's going to add 2 mana, basically Dark Ritual with these cost reduction effects in play. More Ral flips happen. The pen goes to the paper, and Ral is going to be at 8. Probably. You do have to win a flip at a certain point for that to happen, but surely the Ruby Stone play is not going to fizzle that way.
It'll be a great coverage moment if we do. I'll say that.
Yeah. More draw, though, impulsing away. This turn looks so good. Again, I'm pretty confident I saw a Silence in hand. So I'm a little surprised.
Oh, sorry to interrupt you there. I think the idea here is that I would have got my Past in Flames countered if there was a Force Negation. Right. So I'm going to hold it just in case I need the mana. And then once I have the win locked up and I have enough mana, then I'll kind of pull the trigger on, hey, Silence in case you're trying to do something, cheeky when it comes to like consign my Storm Trigger, force my thing,
Yeah.
Obviously, that's pretty unlikely to happen. I think Rob just kind of knows, like, if I got this far, things are looking good.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment here of the situation. Like I said, if Arms Chant was available, surely at this point it already gets cast. So now I'm going to look through the hand. Does have a fetch land available to crack here, but there is an unbelievable amount of cards available to play. There's 4 things we can flashback and then 2 things already exiled. And one of the things exiled is another draw spell, quote unquote, that exiles cards, something you can play under Narset.
Okay, yeah, and it looks like Rob maybe is thinking like casting the Silence because he was tapping his actual land.
Yeah, it's an interesting spot because I kind of agree with you. Like at some point, I'm like, well, if you can afford to do this, surely you'd want to do it now because there's only really one card that stops you from this point. But also at this point, you probably would have been stopped. So I think we are going to cast it just in case. Sure, why not? No, sequencing. I mean, I don't know. Hard to say. Rob, there's a lot of different things to think through. Rob clearly very, very practiced with this deck, but is going to finally commit to Silence. Now knows that everything is going to be all right as long as Ral flips. We don't have to have Ral flip on time to win, but it is going to make the game a lot easier. Can't draw cards, remember though. Metamorphosis does not net you a card. Although Prismatic, is there enough colors for Prismatic? Yes, if we filter with Metamorphosis, is that the conversation we're having right now?
I think so, yeah. I think Metamorphosis should be able to make like, blue-green or whatever, and that will go the distance. Also part of the reason why we do have that Thundering Falls, right? Instead of just 2 of, the Elegant Parlor, makes it so your Prismatic ending can actually hit these cards in, the blue-white control deck.
Decides it's maybe not important enough. Metamorphosis is going to go off to make some more mana. No card draw. Don't remember. Ral is just going to have to flip here. Nam praying for a whiff, as production pointed out to me. That is maybe, honestly, the line you have to take here. Just 13 tails in a row or whatever.
And it looks like...
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, and we're going to go again.
I mean, there's so many cards on the table. There's 4 cards off of in bottle. There's 2 cards in the graveyard still. I mean, Narset's just watching this all unfold, thinking, hey, usually I'm pretty good at stopping people from drawing all these cards. And red card draw, in air quotes, is just saying, I don't think so. And this is a pretty good hit. None of these are grape shot, but I don't think that matters. We've got plenty of redraws here. I mean, again, it's not impossible to miss from this point, but it's really unlikely.
I think Rob's doing you dirty. I think there's a wish underneath that. You see how there's a Ren Resolve with a card under it? I think that's wish.
That is unfortunate for our blue-white control player.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're seeing right now is Rob sort of saying, hey, I'm going to cast all these spells, do my thing, I'll even, whatever, hit my own medallion if I need to. And yep, I still have this grape shot on my sideboard.
Yep, very nice. Great taking it. That matchup seems so rough, but navigated beautifully. Honestly, by both players. All 3 games we saw in this match were incredible.
Yeah, there's a lot of really tight spots there for Nam on when am I supposed to force negation or ending this. Navigated those spots well, but Rob navigating through those really well too, and really knowing his role in this matchup of hey, it's important that I do enough that you interact, but not so much that I can't go off again. Incredibly well played and moves on to 2-0 as we still have more Magic to show you.
Love that. Game 3, I have to assume here between Isaac Ma and Andrew Kidston. Dragon's Age Channel and High Noon are still doing battle, by the way, but and Dragon's Age Channel are finally going to bite the dust here. Looks like a Purge going to get cast here. Seems to be a pretty popular sideboard card for the blue-white decks today.
Yeah, great way to answer problematic cards like Psychic Frog, but also Flage Titan of Fire's Fury.
Supreme Verdict in hand, Consult, and a Teferi looks like Andrew's hand. Not that many lands, which Control typically not all that happy about. Does Isaac have any follow-up threats? That's the question here. Again, playing under High Noon, pretty annoying for stuff like Steel Cutter. See a Lightning Bolt, see a land on the prowess player's side, but I don't see pressure. Tough to win against a Control deck when you can't turn their life total. If you let them sit there and do their thing for a while, you are going to lose. That has been true since 1996. It's still true now.
As it does look like there's at least a good one on top for Isaac, so he leaves it with the Surveil. Really valuing holding up this Mystical Dispute and not getting, a Narset where it's a fairy on board and then having to play underneath additional lock pieces here. As we could have seen what we saw in game number 2 there at the Expressive Iteration to just try and dig for lands.
All right, Surveil, have a peek. We can't see, but Andrew can. Likes it enough to keep it on top. It's probably a land. It is. Flooded Strand.
Yeah, and it looks like Andrew has Consult the star charts in hand, so maybe waiting to see what Isaac does and then sort of get max information. And with only one spell a turn, you don't have to worry too much about a follow-up happening.
6 minutes just left in the round, by the way, so not a lot of time to finish this game, although again, Prowess the deck pretty good at getting it done. Blue-white, maybe not so much. Little shotgunning here for Andrew, gonna both cast his card and find his land all in one. Does have to shuffle before consulting, but Star Charts is the kind of card that pushes you kind of through this mid-game, gives you enough card volume to try and overpower the tempo deck here. So a very good spot with only a Dragon's Age Chandler, especially if Andrew can find an answer for the card. Not a guarantee, but seems pretty likely, all things considered, as we're actually just considering with Consult on the stack. Can let it resolve here.
Yeah, I think we got the High Noon was in play for a second.
Looks like Mystical Dispute might be the card in Isaac's hand. Maybe tipping it a little there, but Consult will resolve, thanks to High Noon in part. And we'll look at a couple cards here for Andrew. Teferi in hand, Verdict in hand, Isaac Run Scepter. Now that's a way to maybe force a concession out of your opponent if you're low on time in a round.
Yeah.
You can find the other half though.
You really do. Andrew also probably, like you said, can kind of figure out like, okay, there's got to be like a Mystical Dispute type card. Remember, it's open deck list, so if there's any sort of interaction in that vein, Andrew knows, the potential options it could be. So even if there's a Spell Pierce, he kind of knows like, okay, something like that has to be in hand if you're interacting here. Might inform his decision just a little.
All right, picks up 2. Looks like one of them is Force of Negation. Supreme Verdict. Get him out of here, Dragon's Age Channeler. No counter spell. Necessary. Nice Mystical Dispute, buddy. Plays a land, passes the turn. 4 minutes left in this round, but no threat here for the prowess player. But do have to win the game here on the blue-white control side.
Yeah, Corey Steel Cutter the draw. Typically a great card against interactive decks. Not so great into High Noon.
Yeah, decides on Iteration instead. Wants to get a little deeper. A little bit more card volume, maybe play a land drop, Slickshot, Show Off among these cards. Can't play that one, remember. Puts one in hand, one in exile. That one's gone forever thanks to High Noon. And one on the bottom, going to pass it back. Very quick untap here for Andrew. I think understands the clock here. Needs to get this game over with if he thinks he's going to take it down. And right now, this position's looking pretty good for the control player. But the game must, in fact, end as Teferi goes down. That's going to get disputed, I have to imagine. Does have enough lands left over, though. Look at that. Open deck lists. Yep, I will pay 3. That's fine. And that's Teferi's in play. Passes the turn, ticks it up.
Yeah, great play there from Andrew. Might seem small, but sometimes players might minus just to get their value, and the Slickshot Show Off that we know is in hand would have been able to pick off that Teferi.
And there's said bird. Again, also typically quite good, but when you can't play extra spells to trigger the prowess, significantly worse as an aggressive creature. No more answers, though. It's Sanitarium, Spell Snare, Force of Negation, but Teferi, of course, the Great Equalizer, another High Noon. And that might mean we're on the deal damage with one High Noon plan.
Yeah, I think that's a totally reasonable thing. It looks like maybe activating... Oh, getting Arcahira, playing
nice.
Arcahira.
Okay, yeah, we understand the clock.
Yeah.
That's I have 2.5 minutes left in this round, and I really want to win round 2. Spell Snare, that's absolute daggers there, and Andrew's going to untap and send in Kahira. Such a silly looking card from time to time, but my goodness, is it good in these control decks?
Mm-hmm.
And this Haiyue number 2, that's a removal spell answer as well. This looks real tough for Isaac.
Yeah, and like you were saying with the damage, High Noon's representing that you're already at 10, quote unquote, right? Deal 5 twice. So yeah, these sort of spots are great. I mean, your opponents, what are they gonna do? Hit a land drop here? Can't really do too much. They're not gonna be able to bolt your Kahira on your turn because Teferi plus High Noon's a lock. So you can either just activate your land or shoot at the face. So many good options. I love this from Andrew.
Yep.
Bang.
Yep, straight in the face. Thank you for reminding me, by the way, that High Noon can in fact hit any target, and Isaac's face is a target here. Under 2 minutes left, but I think Andrew's playing more than quickly enough to have this one done. Fiddles with the die a little bit, ticks up, goes in with the Kahira, passes the turn. Please keep playing the game. Ike knows that the win is very close. 8 damage on the table between the Kahira and that second High Noon. And again, locked out under the Noon and the Teferi. Andrew leans back in his chair. I think understands the situation, but Isaac's going to keep on playing it out. There are always outs, Mason.
There are outs. I think Isaac's about 7 to 6 life, somewhere in there. We've shocked a couple times. We've been hit by Kahira twice. So we might be dangerously close to this High Noon beating us in a way we never really intended.
Yeah, not what the card's supposed to do, but certainly been effective enough in this game. Turns off all of the power stuff, makes expressive iteration significantly worse. Yeah, just says, yeah, whatever. Have expressive iteration. There's a High Noon in play. This force negation doesn't matter. Hold it up on your turn, alongside your Kahira and your High Noon, so nothing silly can happen. You can just play it as a good old negate for 3 mana. Oh, never mind. High Noon now. Oh, that does open up some instants. That's actually maybe all good. Oh, yeah, never mind.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, you see him kind of point there. Typically, that could have been an awkward moment, but Teferi is fun for everyone. As we see, this blue-white control back, yeah, is really, really good at sort of locking somebody out of the game and then just kind of winning before they get a chance to get out from underneath it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes obviously the lock is just the game, and it lasts for long enough that that's all you need. But very well navigated. They're under some time pressure. They understood that the game needed to get over. High Noon was doing so much work there for Andrew, and then just said, you know what? The correct play here is to pay 5 mana for a 3/3, and that in fact was the right play.
Congratulations to Andrew here, though. Moving on to 2-0. Isaac seemed to play well from everything that we saw, but was not able to kind of pull it out. 1-1, still very much alive with 9 rounds of Magic left to go today.
That's true. It's 2 rounds down, but plenty more to go today. 15 total plus top 8 across the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Don't go too far away. We're going to go to a break, but RC Calgary returns in just a moment.
Makes me stronger. I got a long makes me stronger. Been here before a million times, caught in between the truth and the lies. What doesn't kill me makes me
Hello and welcome back, everybody, to RC Calgary. We're about to kick off round 3 here. My name is Julian Car. I'm still joined by Mason Energy McDaniel Clark. How are things going?
Things are going well. We've had a great first 2 rounds of Magic here at the Calgary RC. And I've had a blast covering them with you, and I'm excited to see more, as I think we have some pretty spicy decks lined up for this feature match.
Very excited. We'll get things into a moment, but I just want to take a second to thank our host, FacetoFace Games. If you, like me, maybe saw that Ruby Storm deck in action last round and do want to buy yourself some cards, FacetoFaceGames.com is the place to be. They don't just host tournaments, folks. They'll sell your card stuff as well. No matter the card game you like, you can check them out at your leisure. Just open them up right now in your second monitor. Have a browse. See what you can see. Here is the other host of this Calgary RC. We're going to do a round, though, because the matchup is going to be up shortly. It'll be Edgar versus Avery. Prowess, the deck we've seen already just a bit on camera, versus Esper. We'll start with the Izzet side of things. Anything out of the ordinary here? I feel like the Izzet lists often, coalesce into similar-looking shells, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the most surprising thing for some people is we have 3 mutagenic growths in the main and 1 in the on the main. We're really deviating. But like you said, we're they're playing a very concise list of cards here, and we're sort of forcing these cards to be together because they're kind of the best in class for the most part. And, playing, an Into the Flood Maw, sometimes you see a Holy Heat main, there's typically this idea of like, how much interaction do I want versus how much, sort of burst damage.
Yeah, it definitely has a pretty aggressive leaning list for Swift Spears, for Dragon Nationals, for Slick Shots, all pretty normal stuff. Violent Urge, though, card sticking out to me. A little instant that with Delirium gives a little bit of double strike, which can certainly end games in swiftly, in fact. So a lot of stuff we've seen before. Into the Football is a one of. I kind of like it, little get out of jail free card. Can't afford to play Ottawara, perhaps new mana base, so have to plug in a spell that actually triggers your prowess creatures. But always good to see. Esper, though, the other deck on the docket for this particular matchup. Esper Blink. I love Esper because it could be anything, but this is Esper Blink, not Esper Gorios, which was a pretty popular deck at the PT. Different flavor at this time around, but Quantum Riddler all the same.
Yeah, and we've seen this deck be something that players have kind of moved to. It did pretty well at the Pro Tour, just sort of like Esper good cards is another way to describe this. And players have continued to play it. And there's actually a lot of, differing builds. Some people play like Subtlety and Force Negation. Some people are doing this with like the Overlord, right? Some people are even playing Orcish Bowmaster instead of Esper Blink. We saw a list barely not make the top 8 of the United States Regional RC a couple weeks ago with that one. So there's a lot of different variations, a lot of customability, and people like these kinds of decks. And my understanding is some of the players who play this deck feel really good in sort of the pseudo Blink mirror match, right? They're like, yeah, Flage is a tough card, but I've got the tools to answer it. So you're playing this deck when you want to play against, grindy interactive decks. Obviously, Edgar here on Prowess is a lot more aggressive of a deck, but you have Solitude, Ephemerate, and Fatal Push. These are all really great ways to answer his creatures, so I think this is going to be a great match.
Yeah, definitely Thoughtseize, Fatal Push, and then creatures you can cheat into play in some way and then blink them has been a recipe for success across many different formats. Modern certainly not immune to it. But we're going to kick things off here. Looks like Avery's on the play. Already fetching out a land.
Yeah, if you watch these Canadian RCs or just Magic in general, you're not surprised to see Edgar Magalhaes at 2-0. Definitely one of the, I would say there are a lot of great Canadian Magic players, but I think Edgar is one of those players that everyone really knows, and he does consistently really, really well, and doesn't have like a PT win. Like I think Haynes, a person people really think about as like a Pro Tour champion, but Edgar's, that's like the one thing sort of missing from his, resume, and he wants it.
Maybe later, that's you reminded me, we can maybe play trivia if we can name all the Canadian Pro Tour champions. I can think of at least one more, but we'll get to that in just a moment because Thoughtseize is on the stack and the hand is on the table. Bolt, Lava Dart, beautiful art on that one, by the way. Dragon's Channeler, Violent Urge, Fetch Land, Surveil Land. Not a bad opener for the Prowess play. I feel like seeing a 1-drop and a bunch of cards you like is good, but unfortunately the 1-drop is going to get seized out of the game.
Yeah, and that is kind of a nice spot there for Avery. Is best at answering creatures out of this deck. So, like in a world where there was a bunch of creatures, you can take like, a Core Steel Cutter or a Bolt. That's maybe like something you're pretty happy with. But with Edgar just having a bunch of burn spells, there's a reason you don't see a lot of burn in Modern these days. You're not really going to be able to close the door out without one of those prowessy creatures. So Avery incredibly happy to take that DRC and just sort of move on with things.
Yeah, said for Edgar it was a Surveil, a quick check. Not sure if it was a keep or a bottom, but it was a very quick decision regardless. And Avery's back off fetching a land, finds a plains. And what 2-drop do we have? Riddler, anyone? That's Overlord of the Bailwork instead. Also pretty good on 2.
Yeah, and this is a card that has seen a lot of play here in Modern in combination with that Failure you see flicked over, along with Flicker Wisp as a way to sort of reset this card and cheat it into play quite early.
Kind of wonderful what Flicker Wisp did to the paradigm of Magic.
Yeah.
About how many different decks have used that kind of effect, and of course we have plenty of that here as well. Failure, maybe the latest and I would say greatest, at least the cutest of iterations as far as that particular effect goes. But a fetch land for Edgar is the call. So you widen things out here a little. Do not adjust your sets. This is all good and normal. Definitely want to get a peek at the graveyards here. So Shadows of Production, especially on the prowess side, there's quite a lot of Delirium to consider, and it's already 2 on the way thanks to that Thoughtseize. That's one way to look at getting your really busted 1-drop Thoughtseize on turn 1. Hey, at least my next one's going to be that much closer to Delirium, right?
You're really good at coping. I could tell you used to play League of Legends.
Oh, yes.
You know?
Oh,
we're down
yes.
0-10. I can still win this. No worries. I'm 1/4 of the way to Delirium. As we are going to see the Slickshot show off, I think it's going to get played this turn. The real question to me is it plotted or is it, hard casted?
Find out in just a moment. Figure out which zone it's going to go to. Drawing another threat, though, is good. There was no second creature when we saw the hand on turn 1, thanks to that Thoughtseize. But here's the show off, and it's sideways, so just going to get played straight up. And goodbye.
Yep. And this is one of those nice things about Overlord of the Bailmerk as well, is you get to just sort of aggressively use your Solitudes and keep buying them back over and over and over again. It's part of why they feel so good in the Jeskai Blinky matchups, right? Is they can just sort of, okay, I'll, throw cards at each other and eventually I'll be the one left with a little bit more.
Yep, Emperor of Bones going to be the follow-up here. Just to check, you only worked on MH3, right? I can't hold you responsible for Solitude?
You can't hold me responsible for Solitude. No. Only MH2.
Pretty good card there, as it turns out. Does take out the Slickshot show-off, and then Emperor of Bones is going to scoop up DRC out of the bin. Actually, kind of annoying again for the Delirium Cope angle. So every little thing is getting seen here by Avery. Emperor of Bones, not a bad one. Maybe not the premier threat you're trying to transform into, but better than nothing. Still going to do some damage, and board looking clear, and there are cards in your hand. As an Esper player, that's kind of where you want to be. Does Edgar have something else? The Consternation. I can see top down on the face of our prowess player, though. It leads me to believe that whatever decision is getting made might be kind of a tricky one. Have a little peek at the hand, but I see a lot of spells and not a lot of threats. There's a Steam Vents. Going to be laid down tapped here and pass the turn.
I want to highlight Avery targeting the DRC. It is like denying Delirium, which is nice. It's also really heads up. Edgar's hand's all burn spells, and you would love to have a Solitude underneath your Emperor Bones, right? That's sort of the ideal sort of thing. But Avery knows it's just going to get shot, and then I won't be able to use Overlord of the Bailmerk with it. And while we are stuck on lands currently, so we're not able to play the Flicker Wisp, eventually the Bailmerk will sort of get going, right? So really heads up play here to sort of, maybe you want to be a little tempted to get the Solitude, but now I'm just going to sit here and slowly but steadily work towards this Bailmerk.
Yep, has now Failure under there as well. So just kind of getting it done. There's a threat though. Second DRC going to show up here for Edgar, passing the turn away. Emperor Bones untaps. Little draw here for Avery. What is on the menu next? Another Plains. This is an Esper deck, I will remind you. So these lands aren't quite the colors you may necessarily want, but going to remove the land, actually continuing to go after Delirium and just hold up that adapt cost. No need to really get too fancy with it. Go ahead and deal some damage. DLC cannot block. Can as a 1/1, I think, but that's not really where you put it in the deck. So Edgar not interested in that. If they have a follow-up Flicker Wisp, they're going to target that Bailmerk you pointed out. Mason, it's almost like you played Modern before.
Once or twice, as that Bailmerk comes back now. And remember, you can get any of the cards in the graveyard. So yeah, that Solitude is going to be the one that gets picked up.
Feels so good. Feels like casting Impulse, but you have a 3/1 flyer as well on the back of it. Just such a powerful interaction. You could see why these Blink decks are such a popular, a macro archetype really in Modern. We've seen Jeskai Blink is the most popular deck registered at this tournament based on the metagame breakdown we saw at the top of the show. But Esper Blink, Blue-White Blink, all the Blinks, as long as you have white mana and some other stuff, you can get it done. As Lava Dart going to get aimed at the Flicker Wisp. Not a bad trade. Your 3-drop for my 1-mana spell, though your 3-mana spell did do some extra stuff, and Solitude's going to be the answer here. Just takes the DSV out now before the Delirium trigger can go off. So just trying to deny any potential follow-ups here. Again, pretty heads up there for Avery.
Yeah, nice move. Avery knows Edgar has bolts in hand, and Edgar wants to, surveil and have the knowledge. But before he gets that, he's going to force Edgar, hey, if you want to get this, you're going to have to shoot my Emperor Bones or me or this Belmerk now and have less information to work with. Small things go a long way. And when you're in Avery's position, too, you have this Overlord the Belmerk, you just want to throw these Solitudes in anything that, breathes, right? Just get them off the board. You're feeling good. I want to highlight a small thing here from Edgar, by the way, for those at home. You notice some of his cards are upside down, some of them are the right side up. He's keeping all the cards that Avery knows from the thoughts he's upside down. That way he knows the information Avery has as well. It's a small little tip and a little way to, if you're at home and you're getting into competitive Magic, that's a great way to lighten the mental load of what do they know again? I think it's this. You just know your face down, your upside down cards there.
That's some technology. There was a player back in the day, Jamie Puck, actually wrote down the cards his opponent knew from their hand disruption spells. So same concept, just writing it down on a piece of paper. But I actually like this more, a little bit easier of a heuristic to get at a moment's notice. And there's the upside down lightning bolt is going to get cast straight to the dome, it looks like.
Yeah, and Edgar going after Avery to the face, not shooting the Emperor Bones, not shooting the Overlord of the Baelmerk. I thought we might see just a double hit on the Baelmerk there, and hope to find a way to answer Bones.
Bauble in the bin. Remember, there is a Solitude targeting this DRC. Currently still set to resolve. So Dragon's Chandler looking close to Delirium is not going to get there. Now this Lightning Bolt's going to go after Emperor of Bones. Curious sequencing, but we'll take it. Puts a land in the bin. So 2 successful surveils, I suppose you can say, given that both cards went to the graveyard. Now Lava Dart's finally going to resolve, and we have another surveil trigger to resolve? I don't remember. Perhaps not. Anyway, untap draw.
Yeah, I think what Edgar was trying to do was he bolted Avery because he wanted Slickshot Show Off on top. Because if it was, I believe he had lethal. I think it was exactly lethal. So he was just like, okay, since I don't know my top card, now I'll go after the Emperor of Bones.
Right. That makes sense. I mean, there's a possibility that the bolt wouldn't resolve either. So that actually is super heads up from Edgar if that's the line. That is some incredible forward thinking. But kind of as we can tell from this matchup, it definitely feels like, Esper Blink can be pretty flexible. Is it, has some game, but often pretty aggressive. Certainly the Esper Blink deck is going to be the slower deck in this matchup. You're wanting to play, as kind of as controlling as possible for whatever that means for this deck. Obviously, Blink threats can do things quickly, like this Overlord that's starting to swing in already, getting Flick Whips yet again. Going to be picking up probably another Solitude if I had to guess.
Yeah, and you saw that we flipped the Flicker Wisp, and whenever you flip Flicker Wisp and you can play it, you just get that plus something else, right? So just up a small piece of material and how this deck grinds people out.
And look, Edgar has some somewhat powerful cards if you can find a way to utilize them, but knows the Solitude's in the hand. It's Lavada and it's that Violent Urge, that Delirium Double Strike card, which is very good at ending games, in a combo-like fashion, but you need a creature, a prowess creature to get that done. And unfortunately, this Baelmerk just keeps on bringing back Solitudes.
Yeah, I think that was Edgar's turn. I think he needed to draw a Slick Shot there and just hope that Avery is on Solitude and non-white cards. Because now he knows no matter what, there'll be another white card in hand for Avery, which means it's going to be almost impossible to close this door unless Avery gets a little aggressive with Fetch Shocking. And, sometimes it happens to the best of us.
It certainly does. There's always a way when you have enough lightning bolts in your deck, but it's going to be 2 creatures coming in. Baelmerk, I believe, at 5. So 8. 5 on the ground, 3 in the air. Going to end the game pretty quickly, pick up some more cards. Does it really matter what the piece of material is? Maybe it doesn't. Lava Dart, though, going to stop the clock and take that 3 damage away. So only 5 here from the Baelmerk, but still a tough position given how big this creature is. And again, Avery, not the deck that's necessarily the aggressor in this matchup. Still chances, but again, with Solitude Hardcast now ready and available, seems like it's going to be really tough to find another window to try and win. And that's if you find the card that gets it done for you. And yeah, scoops it up and says, Edgar decides, you know what, that game, not going to be one I get to win. Going to go ahead and shuffle things up for the next game and continue on. Very clinical looking Blink game there for Avery.
Yeah, Avery did a great job of just showing okay, I'll pick these things apart. Combine that with Thoughtseize, a card that has been carrying mid-range decks for, decades now. Just picking apart Edgar's hand. And this is the problem sometimes when you play these, synergistic aggro decks, is if you're missing one of the pieces where they get taken away, your deck kind of just flounders. But when it's all humming, you are incredibly powerful.
Yeah, I think especially, there's lots of different takes on prowess. I think especially the version that Edgar has brought, lots of mutagenic growths, violent urges, lots of kind of like combo-ish enablers, lots of ways to try and get the game over in a minute. So obviously, when those things stumble or the pieces don't quite come together, it can be tough. Take a look at the sideboard here for Avery. To start things off, Esper Blink for Wrath of the Skies, another Prismatic. Everyone's got on High Noon today, apparently. Not sure it's going to be used in this matchup, although maybe. Did see it out of blue-white control. What sticks out to you here for the sideboards, Mason?
Yeah, so High Noon sticks out to me, especially on the play. I could see an argument, or maybe on the draw, you're like, oh, I'm a little too far behind. I imagine it's going to come in. It really depends a lot, too, on how much does Avery have in the main deck that they feel is a bad card, right? Like, how many cuts are we going to have? Because you have Wrath of the Skies, too, which this deck has a lot of haste threats that can be good against Wrath, but Wrath is also going to clean up all the threats, including the Corey Steel Cutter, so it's a good catch-all. My guess is that despite how good Thoughtseize was in that game, we're probably going to go down on cards like that, down on some Teferi Time Ravelers, and bring in these interactive pieces like Prismatic Ending, like Wrath of the Skies, and some number of High Noon. But High Noon Wrath of the Skies is also a Nombo, so the deck does have some awkward tension here. I'm curious to see how he wants to go about solving this riddle.
Yeah, we'll have to figure it out. Take a look at the other deck list in just a moment. Is it checking the sideboards? Ooh, Stock Up. God, I always love to see. What a fun one. But just trying to pick through anything that sticks out here for you in this matchup.
Yeah, so Consign is weirdly pretty good. When the Felia attacks, it puts a trigger to exile something, and then you can consign the returning trigger to get rid of something. You can also consign a Solitude trigger. So it's not something I want, I think a ton of, because I think you're in Holy Heats are probably a bit better at fighting what the game is about, which is kind of like the board and Balemark over and over. But there is some good to be had with Consign. So I'm really curious to see, does Edgar board in like Unholy Heats, Consign, stock ups, and move into more of a grindy game plan, right? Really leaning on Corey Steelcutter? Or are we going to lean more into like, I'm going to be fast and clean? Typically, when I talk to players about this deck, I always like to say, if I'm going over 5 cards of my sideboarding, they better be really good because my deck just doesn't have a lot of cards to cut. I mean, if you look at this, right, Violent Urge, very easy card to kind of cut in this matchup. There's so much interaction on the other side that kind of going all in is going to be really hard. And Mutagenic Growth doesn't have much lines of text in this matchup. So you have 5 cards you can cut pretty easily. But then everything else after that, it's pretty great, right? It's redraw, it's burn spells, it's creatures. And that kind of highlights this deck doesn't get to sideboard a ton of cards typically.
Yeah, we'll have to see what the decisions are. But obviously being on the play is a good place to be, as we'll pop over to our other matchup while we wait for our feature match to kick up again. It is a different Is It Prowess player on the same side of the table, very interesting, versus Jeskai Blink. First time we're seeing this deck on camera, even though it is the most popular deck at the RC today.
And it's seeming more than
play though.
Yeah, Swiftspear play with this EI to sort of go. But yeah, we saw, Ultimate Guard rated us here with their European RC done for the day, and Jeskai Blink the most popular deck there as well. So, this is a really popular deck right now. If you're going to a modern tournament, you can expect to see a lot of Felia and friends.
Hello, people from the European RC, and hello, Andre Mangucci, if you're still out there. I know he was helping with coverage over there in Bologna. So I'd love to have you all here. Welcome to Canada. We're in round 3 of this RC so far here in Calgary, and it's been some pretty banger matchups. Right now we're trying to see if Izzet can punch through against, again, a similar deck, in a similar matchup actually, in the feature match we have with Esper Blink. Again, just trying to kill all the little threats and keep them off the table. Cutter not going to make it. Next threat gets marched, and we untap with 3 lands in play and our life total presumably pretty healthy, which is where we want to be. And here is Fable of the Mirror Breaker.
Great grindy card. You see here from Bo, we have a consign in the deck. So at least Bo thinks in this sort of Blink matchup, we like to have at least one consign. So maybe, we'll have to see if Edgar agrees. Ever seen Fable for first time?
Is this a tell, by the way? Because he does have a consign in hand.
Yeah.
Maybe something there, but just reading the card, there's a lot of text on Fable of the Mirror Breaker. It is quite good. Treasure Goblin, they're already in play. And believe me when I say it only gets better from there, which is maybe hard to believe. Expressive Iteration, though, going to be the call here out of Bo. I see a land, I see a preordain, I see one more card. We check the hand on Holy Heat and a couple extra friends. Trying to sculpt and find ourselves a threat. Picks up 1, exiles the land, bottoms the other, plays the land past the turn. Expressive Iteration. That's the dance we all love to see. Maybe not past the turn, maybe even play a threat. Not past the turn.
Yeah, and this is, I think, why you see a lot of players really like the Prowess deck. It's really good when other people are trying to go fast, right? So if you're trying to like belch, for example, like our Pro Tour winning deck, this deck has interaction for you and is typically at worst the same speed, often faster than you at killing each other. But then against decks like this, where they try to grind you, you just in your main deck are packing 4 expressive iterations, 4 preordains. You're going to be able to kind of sculpt. And Corey Steelcutter, really great at sort of battling through just removal, forcing it to be specific removal on the Steelcutter. So, despite nothing really happening, typically this would be game over for an aggro deck, right? First couple turns, you just didn't do much. This deck, not the case.
Yeah, I think, there's a reason Expressive Iteration is banned in Legacy. Extremely powerful card, but I think you're right in that Steel Cutter kind of gives you both an aggressive angle and a grindy angle, which is a pretty good place to be for a card that is also banned, at least in one format. Shoutouts to Standard Wrath of the Skies, by the way. Getting discarded there to Chapter 2 of the Fable. Found ourselves one more card with a bit of filtering there. Looks like Wrath is not going to be on the table for at least this next go-round, but playing more lands, keeping things going, making treasure with the Goblin, all good things for the Deathsky Blink player. Again, Bo is the player that kind of has to break serve here, wants to set up some sort of threat, whether it's an overload turn, whether it's one big combo turn, whether it's just something like trying to resolve a Steel Cutter and grind out that way. Whatever angle is it Prowess chooses, you do need material on the table to advance the game. And we're back.
Like Bo was setting up a Steel Cutter, so good news for Bo over there. We'll have to see if Bo can win that match.
Speaking of Steel Cutter, there's a Slick Shot Show Off, which is a different 2-drop that also attacks. And instead, the Steel Cutter.
Yeah, this is always an interesting spot because Edgar could go plot the Slick Shot, and then it's sort of safe, quote unquote, from everything, right? And then next turn go Steel Cutter, deplot the Slick Shot Show Off. But that play also plays right into a card like High Noon, and you basically don't get much, for the next couple of turns. So Edgar maybe wanting to get this Corey Steel Cutter down, and then if it has an answer to a card like High Noon, can answer plus play another threat, get the trigger going, and start beating down.
Yeah, I think definitely against the game plan we saw last game where Avery's just trying to 1-4 and answer all of Edgar's threats. Corey Steel Cutter definitely the kind of card that you can try and grind through the matchup with if it's allowed to stay on the table. So that's going to be the big question as we pop back over. Cards like Prismatic Ending, potentially Disenchant style effects here. Lots of possible things people can play, lots of Marches of Otherworldly Lights in these white decks these days. So we're going to fetch for a land and see if the Steel Cutter stays on the table, because if it does, that is very good news for our Prowess player.
Little shuffling accident on I-65 there. But yeah, I think Avery has the High Noon, so it's going to be up to Edgar here to really sort of figure out a way to answer this or battle through it. Oh, it looks like actually it was Overload the Bailmark, my mistake.
Yeah, you're all right. The High Noon would also shut off the playing multiple spells a turn thing that all these Prowess decks want to do. Steel Cutter does say second spell. High Noon says you only get one. So that is a positive interaction for the Esper players. Again, one of the reasons I'm sure we're seeing so much High Noon already in the matches and the sideboards we've seen. Do we have 2 spells? We have a Mishra's Bowl, so surely we have at least 2 things to play here. We're going to get a Monk rolling on in the red zone in just a moment. But again, the Bailmerk Blink plan is back online. That was a big issue for Edgar in game number 1. So we'll see how he wants to approach this particular turn. Feels like a pretty important one now that your Corey Steel Cutter is still safe, but your opponent is threatening to grind out the game once again.
Yeah, this is interesting. Edgar could go second Steel Cutter, play Bauble, and then, get your monks, get another card, move on. This plays a bit more into Wrath of the Skies about 2 turns from now, because your Corey Steel Cutter is a great card to kind of sometimes rebuild through that. But Edgar here just going to get in the damage now, save his haste creatures for later. And then I think he's thinking about when to Bauble to play around the card Thoughtseize here. Could Bauble on Avery's upkeep, still see what the card's going to be, and then if Avery kept in Thoughtseize, save that card.
Yeah, trying to think why you'd want the card in your hand. Not sure there's that much free interaction that Edgar has, so instead going to see the draw, as you mentioned. Mason finds the line. What a shocker. That was sarcasm, by the way, if anyone was wondering.
They're like
that's why I have to say it. This is why I have to give caveats. You never know.
And this is something we haven't talked about yet, but Quantum Riddler Ephemerate here, just a really good way to like grind people out in these sort of card advantage games. But also, we just got a 4/6 into play right now. That is technically, something that Edgar can burn down via Unholy Heat or multiple bolts, but it is something he kind of has to do now. Otherwise, Quantum Riddler is going to do a great job of getting in the way in combat.
Yeah, not only does it draw cards, sometimes it draws 2 cards, and it's got an absolutely massive behind. 6 is a huge number of toughness when you're trying to rumble in with your creatures, but as you said, Unholy Heat is in the hand. Can Edgar find the Delirium? Looks like the answer might be yes. A second sorcery is not the card we're looking for, but we find a land off our expressive iteration looking for an instant. that's not Unholy Heat, most importantly, because that doesn't work out that way. It's not like the old Tamagotchi rule. Doesn't work in
Yeah,
reverse, unfortunately.
unfortunately. Edgar does have the ability to just attack and then bolt if Avery blocks. And from Avery's perspective, he probably, will be like, okay, I'll block. And as long as you don't have bolt, things are okay. And if you're just playing like, Swiss Spear afterwards, it's fine. Or excuse me, like a DRC type card. So that's something Edgar has available to him. I'm curious to see how he does want to play this turn.
Crack for Steam Vents, take 2 damage, and something's going to happen after this. We'll find out exactly what in just a moment. But of course, we have to shuffle the deck up first. I see many red spells in Edgar's hand. One of them is definitely Unholy Heat. One of them I suspect is Lightning Bolt. One of them is definitely Slick Shot Show Off. That one's not going to be relevant right now, but probably something to look out for later. Every at 15, so that's a decent life total to work with still, but not the most, as I also saw a third Steel Cutter in Edgar's hand, so kind of has it all here. Even when, no matter what Avery has, but does need to navigate through. There's DRC is the answer, and we're going in anyway. We're going to make some monks and send in the team.
Everyone's 2 right now, so kind of the world's your oyster. Avery maybe thinks about mutagenic growth here is like, the one thing that kind of gets him, but not the end of the world if that does happen.
Yep, immediately runs off to the life pad, so we already know. Takes 6, though. Pretty significant, down to 9 now, should be. Draw some cards, see what happens. Ephemerate rebounding, cantripping off that Riddler, if everyone's wondering how that second card came to be. I see a High Noon. I don't see a Wrath, though.
Yeah, Wrath of the Skies would be the best play here for Avery. It would clean everything up. You'd have this Riddler. You'd be only another 2 turns away from the Balemerc. You can kind of battle through here. We do have High Noon, and we can do something like play High Noon, hold up the dog, maybe get a little tricky in combat.
Could be fun. Other thing to consider is that Edgar did not manage to hit Delirium off of those things. I guess there is the Unholy Eat, Surveil, and Put Your Hands Together angle. Okay, now we have Delirium because DRC is going to get kicked down the well. Fatal Push. Going to take out the potent 1-drop. High Noon is the answer, but I mean, these monks still have prowess. There's still 3 of them on the table. Riddler seems like a good blocker, but I think it's about to get cleaned out here. And there's a bolt in the hand. If Avery takes 6 and then 3 in the upkeep, that is enough damage if everyone's counting here together.
Yeah, and I think Edgar just picked up a land, so you can even equip his Corey Steel Cutter to one of the monks to push an extra damage. Just in case Avery does something like Solitude my own Riddler or Solitude one of your monks.
Does see the line. Again, very, very practiced players here at the RC. So equip it up, deal 1 more. I said 6, it's actually going to be 7, should be down to 2. Dedge maybe had the life totals wrong there because Edgar's scooping up his cards. We're going to be playing a game theory.
Yeah, might just be a moment where we accidentally missed a shock or vice versa there. So either way, though, Avery was going to be in a pretty tough spot. And that's one of the downsides to High Noon, right? So maybe we can check out our other feature match really quick. If you're behind and you're on a High Noon,
oh my goodness, Lee Sin's in play.
Finally, yeah, I know you know this one, and the fans at home are excited to hear this interaction again. So we'll see if we can insect Joseph out of this game here. But one of the funs of new cards coming on the world.
Not the token I expected to see today. That is a monk token. I guess that lore-wise lines up alongside the Slick Shot Show Off.
Yeah. But yeah, if you're behind, High Noon locks you down to only one thing a turn. So great power, great responsibility.
Certainly so. Also a magic card you can play.
Yeah, that's right.
In Modern, actually. I think it's Modern legal. I'm not sure it's good, but you can play it. No, it's not illegal for you to register that. Here's a Solitude. And it's going to be consigned. We dreamed about it. We mused about it. We thought about it for so long. It is, in fact, going to be consigned to memory. Get that trigger out of here. Also triggers prowess. Pretty good.
Not bad.
It's not great. It's not bad. Solitude's still in play. It doesn't fly, though. Can maybe block this monk token, but would go down. Is only a 3/2. Poor old Solitude. Can't have everything. Can't be a giant creature in addition to a Swords to Pleasures on a stick. So both seeming like in a pretty good spot here, but we'll have to see. Again, the Blink deck operating more like the control deck in this particular matchup. Prowess really wanting to get the game over with ASAP.
Yeah, interesting spot here for the Jeskai deck. I'm not exactly sure how big the Slick Shot is, but given the dice is only at 1, I do have to assume it's at 3. And now Joseph can start just casting these Galvanic Discharge, cleaning up the board, and then has Quantum Riddler and so much mana that we could hard cast that Riddler and maybe still even have interaction up.
would be pretty good. I did note Solitude stat line earlier is only a 3/2. Does have lifelink though, which is a pretty good set of words to have on your card in a matchup where your opponent's playing red cards and trying to get you dead. So the monks are going to untap after Solitude rumbles in. How much does Bo have? I see another consign. I think I saw a Lava Dart was the draw for turn 5 lands. How much reach? Again, Slickshot Shower, very good at dealing lots of damage when you play spells. Single monk token of the Corey Steelcutter, not so much.
Yeah, I'm also curious. Yeah, is that plotted or actually exiled? It seems to be plotted.
That one is plotted. Okay, that's very good news for the Desert Prowess player. Love it up. Trigger.
Interesting move from Bo. So yeah, in our backup feature match area, we don't have life totals at the moment, but this is like tells me that Joseph probably has a pretty high life total if we're hitting the Solitude here. As you know, 1 damage isn't the end of the world, but often, you know, the difference maker.
Flashback. It targeted the Solitude, so I think we're going again on the Prowess trigger is the goal here. Pretty sure he pointed at the Solitude, but I could be wrong. So trying to push some damage here, certainly.
It did look like it's a Solitude. I mean, maybe that was his way of like pointing across to Joseph. I know I've been got before in the feature match area. It looks like they're pointing there, but I do think that was Solitude. Yeah.
Sack a mountain. Poke it again. Trigger some prowess. Get your, not even blocker right now. Just get the creature out of there. I don't want to look at it. I need something to target with my Lava Dart. And I want to make my creatures as big as they can possibly be. Slickshot Shelf already at 5 power. Monks up to 3, if I recall correctly. Prowess math is tricky. I'll let you handle that one, Mason.
Yeah, so, you know, a good way to kind of look at it here is, you know, the monks are going to be tied right now because we use the creature for one of the spells. So they're going to always be the same. And then, you know, how many ever spells there is, our Slickshot Show Off's going to be that number +1 higher. So this is a lot of damage coming across here.
In we go. Rumble to the red zone. Does Joseph have an interactive spell? Lots of open mana. Probably indicates yes. Goodbye. Galvanic Discharge. Very good to have in that spot once again. And the bird hits the bin. The monks, though, do rumble in. Should deal 6 there. And Solitude number 2. Problematic. Again, just using the lifelink. Moving some of these creatures. Doesn't really care that Bo gets a bit of life back. Happy to keep on playing defensive threats here. As we're back to our feature match here. Curious how that one turns out. We'll have to wait. Save that thought for another day. As it's Avery on the play, but it's DRC, the first non-land permanent on the board in the game for Edgar.
Yeah, reminder, Corey Silcover does give trample, so Joseph there is going to take 1 in his spot. Hopefully he can rally back from that. Edgar here, he's going to see if he can get some Corey Silcutters going crazy like that as well.
Certainly seems to be the card of choice against Blink decks. It's High Noon, though, once again. And that's going to turn off a lot of the fun that Is It Prowess has. See if Edgar can deal with that or just play through it. Going to have to do one or the other. Bloodstained Maya going to hit the bin. We're going to find ourselves a land and see what the follow-up is here. As you mentioned, being on the play pretty good in this matchup.
Yeah, having just this chance to kind of get off tempo a little bit, you know, and be like, okay, this is going to help me for the rest of the game. I'm going to give it my turn 2. Life's good. We talked about sometimes from the draw you play it, it can still be pretty bad. As here comes Overlord of the Baelmerk pretty quickly there for Avery as well. Feeling, you know, confident in that decision. I wonder if that's a sign of this is the best thing we have or maybe the only thing we have.
Yeah, I think a Riddler got taken off of that Baelmerk, if I'm recognizing the arts correctly, but not a Solitude, which is kind of the card we've seen Avery reach for every single time with the Overlord. So Edgar has to think, I have 1 spell this turn. It's going to be a good one. Expressive Iteration. Going to pump up both my creatures. Corey Steelcutter in the bins. Good for Delirium fans, but not enough left. DRC is going to stay unchained. Sorry, chained to this turn. Not going to be a 3/3 yet, but of course Slickshot Shelf is going to have 3 power. Thanks to its pseudo prowess ability, and we're going to take 4 damage on Avery's side. Should be down to 12 now. Although again, fetches and shocks are everywhere. So life, these little bits of life do matter. It's not free, even though the mana is absolutely abundant in Modern.
Yeah, I was curious if Edgar was going to fetch a Surveilled land there and just try to bink Delirium and just
that would
push a little extra.
Nice.
Yeah, decides to hold it. Makes sense with the bolt in hand.
I would have done that play, but I'm that guy. I just want the dopamine of hitting Delirium. I don't even care if it's good. And that's why Edgar's playing in the RC and he's 2-0 and I'm here commentating.
That's fair. I mean, I think I might have done it too. You know?
It's hard to resist the gamble.
It's a lot of damage, you know?
Also true. It is relevant to the game plan that Edgar is trying to enact as Avery making some decisions here about his own Surveil lands.
So from what I can make out of Avery's hand, we have the Riddler that we picked up that you talked about. We have, it looks to be an ephemerate, and I think it's just lands is the rest of it. With the Solitude we just draw, making life so incredibly nice.
Flicker Wisp, Bailmuck. Let's do the flippy. I see Teferi in the bin, by the way. That's a fun alt art. Little bird Teferi thanks to Bloomburrow. But probably not the card we're going to pick up. Also, it's illegal because it's not a creature. And instead, I see a Felia. I see another Teferi, funnily enough. So that is still in the deck. But we're going to pick up something here. Can you pick up a Planeswalker?
You're allowed to pick up Planeswalkers with Bailmuck.
There you go. Learn something new every RC. That's why we watch, folks. Felia instead, they're going to be the choice.
Yeah, and Felia does a really good job of just like turning the Bailmuck engine going. And Avery knows, hey, I've got this Solitude in hand. I'm going to Solitude Ephemerate. Maybe even when Edgar casts the spell here, right? Just make sure you get those 2 creatures off the board. Let him surveil. I guess you can't because of High Noon. Excuse me. This is still on Avery's turn. But the moment Edgar goes for something, Avery knows that we can start taking over this game. Even just ephemerating your Flicker Wisp is really good if it gets targeted. Just Bailmurking or exiling one of Edgar's cards for the turn.
Yeah, it seems tough. We should be in Avery's end step right now. So Avery's going to be locked on spells. So Lightning Bolt is free to clear the way. We're going to get that Surveil. Immediately go to the graveyard. That's a Mishra's Bauble by the looks of things. Just barely make up the bottom of the frame. So Delirium is going to be there now thanks to the bolt itself going to the bin. But it was Lightning Bolt to the face. Edgar with a very simple plan this game. I don't care what you have in play. I just want you dead.
Yeah, Edgar picking up Spell Pierce here. Maybe a nod here on the draw towards High Noon as well.
Would be really good if we have a Lava Dart. We aim at that Flicker Wisp and then we could Spell Pierce the old Ephemerate. But as you noted, that is not how it works under High Noon.
Yeah, I'm curious how Edgar wants to go playing this turn. Because when he has the ability to cast a spell, combat gets a lot trickier for Avery.
Mm-hmm.
But some of these things he does want to do beforehand.
Looks like we're just going to block here. DRC is online. Edgar's going to say, okay. Oh, he's trying to bait out. No, it's a Solitude instead. Maybe waiting for the Ephemerate, but instead the Solitude is going to be into play. This is the only spell that Avery gets this turn, but it's a pretty good one. Especially with the Bailmuck maybe back, ready to be blinked again. Actually, it's online thanks to Flicker, so it's just going to attack and be able to pick it up. This looks brutal for Edgar.
Yeah, this is a really tough spot. And you see Edgar just having to kind of let the Slick Shot go. And then he has to trade here and hope that, you know, his one spell is good enough. But against Overlord the Bailmuck, it's so hard for that to be good enough.
Yeah, not only are you taking 5 a turn, but they're picking up their best creature. It's usually a Solitude. If they're not picking up a Solitude, something's really going horribly wrong for you, most likely.
Yeah.
So you kind of hope that it's a Solitude, but you also don't want it to be a Solitude. No graveyard hate here for Edgar. Maybe had a Surgical on the board, but I don't even know if you want to bring it in. It seems so niche for a scenario like this. Just tough to battle through the tools these Blink decks have. So good at grinding forever and ever and ever. And is it prowess? Got a lot of juice, but they do run out as the games go on. And this Solitude is coming back. Ooh.
This is the Solitude. One, yeah. Let's draw one.
Keep that one. One spell turn. Don't forget. Bailmuck going in, though. We'll do it once more here. Flip over 4 cards. Land. High Noon. Something else. Doesn't matter. Pick up the Solitude. Doesn't have to be from the cards you flip over, which is one of the reasons this card is so good. In fact, it's Teferi that's going to be the choice. Just wants to lock out the interaction that Edgar could have in future turns.
Now, this might actually open up Spell Pierce here for Edgar. Converting it into a real card. He's got to be happy about that.
Feels good. There's your 1 spell for turn. Hey, I have 1 spell for turn 2. Don't do it. You can't play another spell. Avery looks at the hand quickly and says, oh no, I'm not allowed to do that. Hoisted by my own hubris is the High Noon still in play. 1 spell a turn still for both these players. And Spell Pierce pretty quickly snapped off here on the powerful Planeswalker. Surveil resolve, Spell Pierce to the bin, and pass it back. Here goes the land. Fine time to Surveil, I imagine. Thundering Falls is indeed the call. Is it 7? Is this winnable? It's tough.
It's definitely winnable. The way to win, though, is the burn spells, right? Mm-hmm. We need to actually be bolting and darting. We talked before about how that's typically not enough these days. Sometimes the games do hit this point and you can kind of get there. The real problem is Edgar needs to get across probably one more attack to make it quick, right? Otherwise, it's going to take 2 complete turn cycles of like bolt, dart, bolt, dart. Bending the dart there actually kind of nice. It takes 2 different darts for it to really matter here. So having the one makes 2 bolts lethal.
Yeah, and again, Nose of Solitude's there, so committing 2 creatures, even though Slickshot Shelf's only going to be a 1 this turn and cannot get any bigger thanks to the High Noon. So DRC is going to get taken out by the Solitude, and Edgar's going to at least deal 1. Playing to the outs, I would say, for Is It Prowess here. Kind of knows that it's going to be bolts and darts. They're going to have to get it done. There's a land in play. That's a redraw later on. But again, pass it back. Only 1 spell a turn.
Bolt in hand for Edgar.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, he has most of the tools. He just needs to get across the Slickshot Show Off 1 time with a spell.
Bailmerk coming in. Actually used the redraw right now for Edgar. One of the information before the Bailmerk rumbled in.
Maybe was hoping to hit one of his few Unholy Heats in his deck.
Oh, yeah. That would make a lot of sense. Would have been pretty good in that spot. Instead, Bailmerk goes in. Again, going to deal 5. Games are going to go on for too many more turns here, but if Avery plays a spell, the bolt cannot be counted thanks to High Noon. We could find that situation twice. There's a Bailmerk. This does count as casting a spell, even though you're not paying very much mana for it. Trust. This is still a spell you played. So again, we pick the cards up. What do we see? A lot of different options here. But again, Avery's not going to have time to cast all these spells. This game is like 2 turns left.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of getting either a Solitude or Felia, whichever you prefer. You have the Solitude in hand. Felia lets you sort of block something like a Swift Spear.
Bolt you. Now, if he does another bolt, it's really interesting, because then when do you cast it is the question.
Yeah, because remember, Edgar knows Solitude can hit the Bailmerk as well. So with the bolt, it's not like it's lethal.
That's true. Salt the Plowshares your own creature. Still coming up. All these years. Certainly 5 life would look pretty good against a deck that's trying to burn you out. This Slickshot Show Off, not long for the world. Again, could do enough damage technically. But going to swing in with 2 1-power creatures once again. Cannot pump these up. The prowess part of the prowess deck really not singing here thanks to this High Noon.
Yeah, and Avery not finding that 5th land, so these Solitudes never hitting the board and being actual lifelinkers has been absolutely devastating. It makes you wonder, should Avery have maybe picked up, the Witch Enchanter earlier and played it tapped in one of these turns, because Edgar is getting across 1 point at a time, and with the dart in the graveyard, we know the next creature that connects will be lethal, unless Solitude, of course, swords his own creature.
Tight spot. If Edgar has a bolt, Avery cannot play a spell. Bailmerk going to come in instead. Again, Edgar's at 7, so 2 attacks are going to get the job done here. Another Solitude to pick up. But again, this High Noon actually proving to be kind of troublesome on Avery's side. Not that it hasn't done work. I mean, I think the game maybe ends if the prowess creatures stay alive and Edgar's able to actually unleash the flurry of spells from his hand. But hasn't happened yet, so a very tight race here. It's both players now at 2 life.
Yeah, and this is a scary moment for Avery.
Yeah.
If you tap out and there's a bolt, you lose, but...
Fatal Push? I mean, can't block either. Like, can't go to 1. Notices the dart in the bin, like you said. So would lose to back-to-back burn spells. Dart immediately from Edgar. Now has Dart again as an option. Dart actually really good in this spot. But again, the Solitude is the problem. That's an Unholy Heat. Mishra's Bauble. Now do we Solitude for the 5 life? Or are we just saying, hey, I think it's okay. We can try and swing in and win. We can respond if we need to. That's going to be a 1 spell on our turn if we need to. Untaps instead. Avery doesn't want to play a spell. Bauble draw. What is it? It's not a bolt. Another Bauble, I believe. So we know that now Unholy Heat has to get committed. That's actually pretty good for Edgar, buying some key time.
Yeah, and a small misstep from Avery there, not flashing the Felia at end of turn. Means Edgar gets another turn. Avery, I think, so worried about getting burned, missed that the bauble was played. Sometimes this happens to you. And I like this from Avery. Whether he does it or not, he's at least considering Solitude, my own Bailmerk. Yeah, regardless, it's a great way just to, gain some life and make life super easy. You have the other one coming off in 2 turns, and with Riddler in hand, I have to imagine that's a pretty safe play as an immediate pass the turn back. Interesting. Maybe that is a Riddler.
That's the 1 spell.
Yeah.
Pass from Edgar, sorry. Never mind.
Yeah, he
Bauble down, draws another card. Unholy Heat, another card in hand. But again, not attacking, which is where you want to be as a prowess deck. Now check the graveyard. Lots of things to consider here. How many Lava Darts are in here? 0. They all got used. How many bolts do you have left in your deck? How many Unholy Heats do I think you still have? How many threats do you still have that you need to deal with?
And it looks like we're going to hard cast Boggart Trawler and just go for that graveyard, removing Delirium.
I just realized he doesn't have red mana, by the way. I was like, wait a second, you can activate the High Noon, but actually, not in this deck. This deck does not have red, at least right now, on the lands that are being presented. So 5 damage would have been enough to the face, but that is not how the card works. So Boggart Trawler instead, also threatening lethal, by the way. So pretty good card. Unholy Heat, get him out of there. Can't afford to have that one swing in. Bolt, that's not a bolt. That's an expressive iteration. That's pretty awkward with High Noon in play.
Oh, and Edgar found Stock Up Preordained Dart. The Stock Up is for these kind of spots, but you're just too under the gun. Your life total is too low to kind of play that game at the moment.
Looks like it's going to be Dart in hand.
Oh.
Ooh, that is not how that card works.
Yeah, it looks like... I think what Edgar was trying to do there was say, like, I put this one in my hand, this one in exile. Maybe...
Okay, figures it out. Exiles a card, puts one on the bottom. I think kept Stock Up?
Maybe, yeah.
We'll find out in just a moment. But again, both players pretty low life total. That 5 life from that Solitude, considered and then executed by Avery, could prove to be pretty critical at this juncture. There's Quantum Riddler, a card that is so good at both catching you back up and getting you ahead. Draws a card. Did he have 1 card in hand when that happened?
He did, yeah. So he's down to 2. Or, excuse me, up to the 2 cards from the Riddler. And it looks like Edgar's taking a look at his deck to see what he can do. I'm not sure. I guess Bobble is a way he can pop and then get in Holy Heat, heat down the Bailmark, hope there's no Ephemerate.
Yeah, I think so. Sorry, just trying to figure out if Avery's supposed to draw 2 cards. They might have missed.
I think he did.
On the Riddler. Oh, okay, he did. Got it. Oh, yeah, you're right. I see 3 cards. Never mind. Drew them quickly. Stock up the play, but again, pretty good at catching up. I see a Lightning Bolt and a Corey Steelcutter and a Bauble and a land and something else. We're going to have to go through them all at some point. Again, great cards to have. 2 life would have been better than 7, but still good cards to find. The thing is, can you deploy them enough? Because you only get still 1 spell a turn on each turn, but only on 1 turn. And Edgar decides, no, I can't. Bailmark is going to be enough damage. And Esper Blink continues on. Avery Shoemaker 3-0 now in the RC.
Yep. Congratulations to Avery. Played really well. Did a good job of identifying our role and just sort of sticking to it. That's really important. Kind of, as silly as it sounds, sort of what does winning look like and how do I get to that point is something that's such an important question to ask. And Avery kept at it and realized, yeah, I think winning means 3 for winning myself here on this Overlord of the Bailmark. Just give me enough time. So congrats there. Edgar Magalhaes played great as always. We see in the future match area. Still very live at 2-1. 6 more rounds of Magic left today. As we do have our backup future match area, looks like we're in game 3.
Oh, this is whatever's happening, I'm very excited about. Again, low key, I kind of like that we can't see the live totals because we get to play detective. Kind of see like how the player's posturing, how much time is left in the round. 11 minutes should be plenty of time here for this final game. But Unholy Heat was fired off. Looks like nope, Feli's in the graveyard, so that didn't get shot. We'll figure it out in just a moment. Looks like we're fetching for a land instead. Pretty big amount of land in play for both players, which typically is good news for the Jeskai Blink player and not as great news for the Is It Prowess player, but beautiful basics, I will say, for Bo, and still a few cards in hand, so plenty of game left to play. Bulb here.
It's interesting because Joseph, once again, we don't know what the life totals are, but had a Flage, could have played the Flage, but left up March of Otherworldly Light. So maybe trying to sneak across lethal with a Flage and hoping Bo makes some plays, thinking life total is higher than it actually is.
Maybe. No Arena of Glory. We've seen some of that already with Flage, which is for the extra combo with the double Lightning Bolt situation. But still a pretty powerful card if you can resolve it. Solitude swinging in those seems like good news for the Jeskai Blink player. So pass back to Prowess, draws a card. None of those look like creatures you can maybe deal damage with. So Bo is just kind of stuck in a Solitude time loop here. Feels pretty bad as the deck playing Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, and Bo has Surgical. So Joseph can play around the Surgical on the Flage by fetching first and then, stacking our triggers correctly and just immediately replaying the Flage. And I have to imagine that play is good even if your life total is incredibly high. Just put Bo in an awkward position. It looks like Joseph's going for it as we have 7 mana now.
Yep, Mesa goes down. Flage comes in. Kind of bolt the face. But then going to go to the bin. Oh no, what are we going to do now?
Yeah, and just
Well,
immediately no chance to respond to that surgical. But we do have a dispute. Okay.
that's one way to deal with it. Graveyard goes away. Still a couple cards left, it looks like, but I'm not sure there's enough to replay the Fade. Escape cost pretty hefty on that one, but a Preordain is going to take a look at the top of the deck here for Bo. Again, under this constant lifelink damage. Not only is his life total going down, but opponent's life total is going up, which is, again, not the direction you typically look for in a game of Magic the Gathering. Going to have a check in the graveyard. Let's count together. 1, 2, 3. That is more than 6 cards.
Yeah. Bo has surgical. Like you were saying, if it was exactly 6, 5 plus the Flayed, you could have maybe seen surgical on a different spell and hope to get a little lucky, hope nothing hits the graveyard, and just leave the Flayge there. But now Bo has to think about, okay, I'm probably at the surgical this Flayge, but how am I winning? I'm losing 2 life. There's a 3 life coming across towards me from this Solitude. Things are getting out of hand. And we're seeing, too, these prowess decks can sort of keep up a little bit with the blink decks, but the blink decks do win if the game goes long enough when it comes to that card advantage grindy game.
Yeah, I feel like, again, Chorus Steel Cut of the card we often look for when you're trying to play a little bit of a longer game. And there it is. Passes the turn, does not want to commit the surgical for a monk token. Now in the upkeep, going to try and nab something in, not even draw step, actually. We're just like, get the Flayge out of here. I don't want to see it. Shows the card, it is March of Otherworldly Light.
Maybe, yeah, minor misstep, not trying to get lucky there with the draw / also get some information, but not the end of the world. One thing Bo can do, though. Oh, sorry, go.
So worried about a counterspell, right? It's the only thing you really think of there. It seems very slim, but that's the only reason to do it in upkeep versus draw.
Yeah, I imagine. Yeah, I guess my thought was just if I was going to play on a counterspell, I would do it on my turn.
Yep,
either way, because they're the least. Yeah, but I think now what Bo has unlocked is what you're about to say about making a monk, which is we've cast the first spell, surgical. If Joseph attacks, maybe we can cast something, make a monk to block, and get the Solitude off the table.
Ooh, that would be certainly a way forward here. March of Otherworldly Light, we know, and now Bo knows that's the card in Joseph's hand. So Chorus Steel Cutter, likely not long for the world, but how much more does Joseph even have? One more card. That's a Ragavan. If my eyes don't see, or it's a Galvanic Discharge. One of the two. Pick your favorite, I suppose.
I think it is Discharge, yeah.
Okay. Both retro frame red cards that people do play, but Discharge would make a bit more sense. And here we're going to start with March here, take out the Steel Cutter. Just no choices need to be made. No instant, no, there is a Lavadar in the bin. So Mason's read correct. Going to go ahead and poke the Solitude for 1. Make a monk token. Now we have a blocker. Lee Sin's back.
Yeah, and thanks to that heads-up play of targeting the Solitude, you force some interaction here on the monk, otherwise Solitude will die.
Galvanic Discharge. Solitude rumbles in. No follow-up burn spell to try and take out the Solitude. So still a problem potentially, but there's DRC. That is a good way to get the game going, but no follow-up spell here for both. Still the Solitude swinging in. DRC cannot block. Delirium is a thing, and Fable of the Mirror Breaker is so good in a spot like this. Yeah, land, shake to hand. Joseph Karani taking the win here in round number 3 in our backup feature match. Again, not sure where we were at in life totals, but that Jeskai Blink deck, the Blink decks in general up against Prowess, at least in this round, Mason, grinding out the more aggressive blue-red decks.
Yeah, and this is one of the nice things with the Blink decks is they can get got by the Prowess decks, but they have enough interaction. And Solitude Ephemerate is sort of a constant among all these decks as a way of, if you go too hard early, you get reeling in a bunch of Prowess triggers, and then you're like, okay, damage, and I go Solitude Ephemerate, that often swing things all the way back in your favor, right? It's like, okay, I'm down some life in the burn spells, and you cantripped a little, but your board's gone. Okay, attack with Solitude, and that looks to be what happened here for Joseph here, moving on to 3-0. So congratulations to him.
Yeah, great Magic to watch. So I will say again, lots of Blink here at the tournament. So excited to see a bunch of that. Also just excited to kind of see how Prowess does, which is because Prowess games, I mean, sometimes people get mad because, Prowess can do some silly things in the early stages of the game. But in general, playing a lot of really interesting Magic with these blue-red cards. Again, very powerful, but can be very aggressive, but also very grindy. So even though it's 2 losses on camera for Prowess, cool to see players navigate pretty complex games. Again, one of the reasons why Modern is a format that people are pretty excited about right now.
Yeah, Modern is really great right now. Lots of different diverse strategies. And I think, too, one of the things that always is a good hallmark of a format to me is where you can play interactive piles and they are good. They can win a tournament, but they're not the default best thing, right? That was kind of always my biggest criticism of MH2 metagame was you should really just be playing default interactive piles 99% of the time. Here in this modern format, we have actually a lot of cool other decks like Belcher, like Storm, things like that that on the weekends, right, you could do. Heck, I would say even Is It Prowess is a deck that's like combo-y adjacent, right? You're kind of all in casting a lot of spells. So really cool to sort of see this modern format, and I'm really excited to see how it evolves with time. Obviously, Amulet Titan is the big boogeyman. We have a lot of very powerful Amulet players in Canada, but notably Edgar Magalhaes, one of those Amulet masters, somebody who first brought that deck onto the kind of the world stage and popularized it, chose not to play it this weekend. Curious if that's because, Edgar's already qualified for Worlds, or is this because, Edgar thinks Titan isn't the best deck?
Well, we'll have to find out. I just want to give a little PSA as we go to our next break here. Round 3 is going to be in the books. Round 4 coming up. We have 9 rounds of Magic today, so if you like Modern, you're in for a treat. Stream is going to have to do a little reboot, though. Production does need to fix some things on their end. So don't panic. The stream will be back in just a moment. There is going to be a reboot. The stream will go down, but then you should come back as soon as you can. Just wait there in the chat. Wait calmly. It'll come back, and we'll join you for more RC Calgary in just a few minutes.